Hey everybody, welcome to the Cherokee County Fire and Emergency Services Blue Card Command Awareness class for Type 4 and Type 5 incidences. So just to give you an update of where we're at in this whole Blue Card implementation process, we currently have all chief level officers and captains certified as a Blue Card Incident Commander. That was kind of phase one into the whole blue card implementation process, and now we're moving on to kind of like the next phase of the implementation process, and that is the getting the balance of all the personnel, the lieutenants, sergeants, FAOs, and firefighters, um, up to speed on the blue card program. It's not practical to get everybody certified right now, but of course we do want everybody to have a good working knowledge of blue card command as we move along through this implementation process. Don't really have a firm implementation date yet. It's just kind of has to do with how quickly we can get things done. We're working hard to get everything done, but of course, with all our other commitments, sometimes we have to make adjustments in our schedule. But we're working hard to get things done, working hard to get the information out to you. And this is the first part of phase two here. So moving right along, Type 4 and Type 5 incidences. For those of you guys who don't really know that, a Type 5 is pretty much a local type incident that can be handled with resources with one or two stations, and then maybe a Type 4 would be maybe what you're looking at, some kind of a larger type structure fire that might require help from throughout the county to assist. And then those are the two types of instances that Blue Card is designed to help you guys mitigate as incident commanders, Type 4 and Type 5. But going down through the list, Type 3s will require state resources, and a Type 2 incident will require a regional resource, perhaps a hurricane or a large wide path tornado hits multiple states down in our area. That would be more of a type 2 incident that would require regional resources. And then moving on down the line, Type 1, you're looking at some sort of a national emergency that will require national assistance. So moving right along here. So what exactly is Blue Card Command? Well, first of all, Blue Card Command is obviously, I'm sure most of you guys know, is pretty much the brainchild of Chief Brunacini, the longtime fire chief out in Phoenix, Arizona. Some of you young guys out there, younger folks, don't know too much about Chief Brunacini. He's got a lot of published literature out there. You guys should check out. Pretty innovative for his time. So you might want to check some of that stuff out. But basically, what he did was he took his policies for his jurisdiction out there and pretty much packaged them into a communication package for a program called Blue Card Command. So it's been around for a few years now. We thought it made sense for Cherokee County after vetting several different incident command options. This is one we settled on. All right, so the goal of Blue Card Command is we want to package standard actions to standard conditions for standard outcomes. That's what we're looking to accomplish. And our standard outcome is for Cherokee County and for most jurisdictions across the nation. Our standard outcome is to put the fire out while keeping everybody safe. That's what we want to do. That's what we feel like Blue Card does for us. So going on this slide here, you see a standard condition, which is a house on fire. We're going to take standard actions. We're going to evaluate our critical fireground factors, and then we're also going to evaluate our building and evaluate the fire and the location and things of that nature in a standard fashion from top to bottom on every incident. We're going to do that in a standard way for a standard outcome. All right. And one thing I didn't mention on the previous slide, what we're looking to do is we're looking to be able to effectively manage maydays. We're able to we want to be able to have a protection plan in place as incident commanders to assist our folks inside these buildings in an emergency situation. Should a mayday go down, we want to be prepared to handle it effectively and efficiently. That's our goal, and that's the goal of Blue Card Command as well. Blue Card Command is not out there to change tactics or anything like that. It's not out there to take tools out of your toolbox. In fact, that's one of the reasons we decided to go with Blue Card, is because we feel that we won't have to do that using this program. We're taking the communications package that Blue Card Command provides, and we're going to take that and apply it to standard conditions for standard actions for standard outcomes. That's our goal. All right, folks, here we are with the 8 functions of command. The 8 functions of command is basically it's what we're going to look at it as our job description for our incident commanders. Never really had a job description for incident commanders in the past. We've kind of relied on some vague policies and some unwritten rules to kind of guide us through our incident command responsibilities. Now we have pretty much a really good blueprint with standard, predictable, sane, and lucid job description to train on and to get efficient with and create muscle memory for acting an incident commander role. These command procedures give you ICs the responsibility for overall incident results, along with organizational authority, putting all incident responders to work with the same common set of tactical objectives. If you remember a few slides back, we talked about a communications plan that we could apply standard actions that would allow us to apply standard actions to standard conditions to achieve a standard outcome efficiently. So this is what we're going to base all those communications off of, these 8 functions of command here. So, if you look, you can't necessarily do one before you do the other. You can't assume command before you deploy your resources. So that's the kind of point behind all of this right here. So for your engine company officers out there that are taking this course right now, you're pretty much going to be responsible for 1 through 5. I might be able to come up with a couple of situations where you might do a little bit of number 6, a little bit of organization, but for the most part, you're going to be responsible for 1 through 5. Ensuring proper deployment, assuming command, a good size up with a good IEP, and communicating all that effectively. Now the captains and battalion chiefs arriving behind you, that you're going to be transferring command to, they're going to be more organization and review, evaluation, and revising, and continuing supporting and terminating command. So that's going to be pretty much their role. As engine company officers, you're pretty much going to be responsible for 1 through 5. So there are 2 different statuses. We're going to just jump right into the program here pretty quick. We're going to kind of build a foundation, and it might get a little bit more complicated as we go along. But so jumping right in, there are 2 different statuses that companies fall into on the incident scene. And it's basically you're either assigned or you're unassigned. All right, if you're unassigned, you're staged, you're rehabbing, or you're rehabbed and ready to go in a forward standing posture, ready to get back involved in the actual incident scene. Or you're assigned. You're the first unit to a location, you're assigned to a division, or you're on deck in division, or you're recycling in division. Now, of course, we'll talk about some of those terms may be a little bit unfamiliar with you guys, but we'll talk about those more in depth as we go along through the program today. But the point I want to make here is, if you're not in any of these 2 groups, if you're not staging, rehabbing, or rehabbed and ready to go, or if you're not the first unit on scene to a location or to a division, or if you're not on deck in a division, or if you're not recycling, basically, for all intents and purposes, you're freelancing. And if you're freelancing, we don't have a play in place or a playbook in place to protect you. If you're freelancing outside one of these 2 particular boxes that we have right here, it's going to be extremely difficult for us to protect you within our communications plan. So keep that in mind as we work along through here today. We want to make sure that we are aware of our assignment and aware of our location and where we're supposed to be to prevent the freelancing. All right, so moving right along here, we're going to talk about a few more things. We're going to talk about level 1 staging. It applies to all initial responders on the first alarm assignment. The first engine, the first truck company, and first BC respond directly to the scene, and that's automatic. We're talking about levels, we're going to talk about assignments a little bit later on, and the new way we're going to deploy our resources as we go along through here. But the first engine, first truck company, and first BC, they're the only ones to respond directly to the scene. That's very important. It gives the incident commander an opportunity to begin to manage his scene appropriately without being overwhelmed. So you'll see the next line there. State level 1 staging automatically goes into effect after the initial radio report. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about the initial radio report shortly. But when you hear somebody go on scene and give the initial radio report, which is kind of like what we used to call a size up, that automatically implements staging. So we don't need to call back and forth on the radio, decide if we need to go to staging. There's no need for the incident commander to say, so-and-so, engine 1, engine 2, or engine whatever, report to staging. It's automatically going to go into effect. Now, this is level 1, keep in mind. This is level 1 staging. Now, all subsequent arriving units will stage 1 block away in their direction of travel, not passing their last tactical option. So last tactical option, if we was in class right now, I'd ask somebody to give me an example of the tactical options. Tactical options for your engine company is typically going to be your water source. It's going to be a hydrant, most likely, or there's other water sources out there that we can use. But typically it's going to be a hydrant. Now, if we're in a truck company, our last tactical objective will be basically the address, access to the property. So that's going to be, as we work through this program, we need to keep those kind of terms in mind. All right. So now anything above a first alarm assignment, if we go to second alarms or greater, we're going to need to institute level 2 staging. Now the first engine company will typically become the initial staging company officer. We'll obviously try to upgrade with staff positions if possible as the incident progresses. And incident commander should designate the staging location when requesting an additional alarm. So it becomes very, it can get very chaotic should we request a second alarm without designating a spot for them to stage. All incident commanders should make sure to establish a level 2 staging area when they call for the second alarm. It can get very chaotic when we have different resources staging at different areas. It's not very conducive for the incident commander to maintain a good count on his resources if they're not all in the same area. So let's make sure to do that when we request our second alarms. Now, dispatch should dispatch on a separate radio channel. Dispatch is going to dispatch the additional alarms on a separate radio channel. That allows us to maintain our incident on the radio channel that we're already on. All right. With that being said, this is a good time to mention that we obviously know that we have some challenges to work through in regards to dispatch. The thing is I told you earlier, Blue Card Command is a communications program, and so anytime you're dealing with communications, dispatch has obviously got involved. So when we started down this path about 18 months ago, one of the first agencies we reached out to, groups we reached out to was dispatch, and they said at 100% they liked what we were talking about, liked the way we were thinking on those sort of things. And told us they would do whatever they could to help us out. So in fact, when we did the certification labs back in February, when we certified the captains and the chiefs, typically for every scenario, we had 2 or 3 dispatchers in there actually operating the radio with us, just kind of getting a feel for how we were looking to do things, the terminology and the flow and things like that. It was very encouraging to see them up there with us. Very engaged with what we were looking to do. So with all that said, we know we got some challenges in regards to dispatch, in regards to policies and things of that nature, and it's something we continue to work on daily, and rest assured it'll all be worked out before we implement this program full bore. So moving on here, the level 2 stage will require a command post helper of some sort. We're still trying to decide exactly how we're going to do that. We think MedCon makes the most sense in that role to help the incident commander manage radio channels and logistical traffic and things of that nature whenever they need a resource to report to the scene. We're going to need MedCon to help coordinate that on radios or some sort of command post helper. So here's where I'm talking about our new deployment model, which is how we're looking to deploy our apparatus for structure fires and the like throughout the county. So this is our residential plan right here. This is what we call a 3-in-1 response. So what we're looking at, the initial dispatch will be the 3-in-1 response. You'll have 3 engines, 1 truck, 1 squad, and 1 battalion chief. So the radio traffic will look something like, Engine 8, Engine 24, Engine 22, Truck 1, Squad 8, maybe Car 6, respond on a 301 assignment to 301 Barrett Circle for reported structure fire. That's all you're going to get on that initial response. Now, if Engine 8 pulls out of the station and they see maybe a thermal column coming from that way, or if they arrive on scene and see they have a pretty advanced working structure fire, then they will be able to, if you look over here on the right here, they will be able to balance the first alarm. So if you call for a balance, Engine 8 to Cherokee, Engine 8 go ahead. Engine 8, please balance this alarm. You're going to get a second engine, and then you're going to get a medcon, a second squad, the service truck, and a second battalion chief. Now, for the most part, this is where we talk about talking about it being a communication package. You know, we feel like if we communicate effectively, that it could actually change the way we do tactics on scene. So here's where we're going to rely on our engine company officers, which is you guys, to determine the need for these resources based on your training, based on how you communicate, based on your experiences. You're going to communicate the need for those additional resources. So this is what we're going to expect you guys to train on. And speaking of which, when you guys complete this online module here that we're looking at right now, we're going to put you through an abbreviated lab session up at the Command Training Center where you'll actually get some radio time and an opportunity to practice this sort of thing. So this is a residential response. Initial dispatch on residential is a 3-in-1 assignment, and then you balance to pretty much what we have these days. So but just keep in mind on an initial dispatch, you're not going to get all these resources right here on the right that you have in the past until you balance the alarm. All right, so moving on. So now in a commercial response, same sort of package here, same sort of outline, I guess you could say, but we're just adding some more apparatus in there. So in the initial dispatch for commercial, which is what we're going to call a 4-in-1 response, you'll have 4 engines, 1 truck, a squad, and a battalion chief. All right, should the engine company officer, the battalion chief, whoever, have any sort of visual indicator, gut feeling, or whatever it is, where they think that they might need more resources, then they can request to balance the assignment. Now, when you balance, I don't know if I said this on the previous slide, but when you balance, that's when you get your full first alarm. So to get your full first alarm, you would need to balance the alarm. So we got to go to a full first by balancing before we can go to a second alarm. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move along. But on the balance, on a commercial balance, you're going to get 2 additional engines, 1 truck, 1 squad, medcon, battalion chief, and service truck. All right, so this is additional alarms. We're going to go to an additional alarm. Right now, when we want additional resources, we'll say, Engine 1 to Cherokee, send me a second engine for manpower, or send me a second and third engine for manpower. We're looking to streamline that process, take the guesswork out of the incident commander by just adding in additional alarms. So again, this will be written out in policy, but if you balance the first and then you need a second alarm, the second alarm is going to get you 2 more engines, a squad, another battalion chief, second medcon, and then a division chief. The division chief could be somebody coming out of headquarters, Chief Prather, Chief Robinson, or Chief West, and they're going to be ones out there helping us coordinate additional resources to come help us either address the incident that we're on or to help us coordinate resources to backfill for the county. So then after that, a third alarm, it gets kind of simplified after the third alarm. So third alarm, you're just going to get two more engines in a squad. And then the fourth alarm will be 2 more engines. Each additional alarm up to 5 will receive 2 additional engines after the third alarm. So some changes coming there, but I think they're good changes, and I think it's going to streamline the process. All right, so another major tenet behind the Blue Card program is a 3D deployment model. So these are our 3 zones right here, if you will. So you got the hazard area over here. That's your 1 area, And then you have the division and ops right here area. So what you got folks on deck, and on deck, if you aren't familiar yet, on deck is kind of taking the place. That term will kind of be taking the place of the RIT team, or the RIC, Rapid Intervention Team, Rapid Intervention Crew. So we're just going to start terming them on deck. All right. And then after that, our third area over here is level 1, level 2 staging. So technically, what we're trying to do on our incident scenes, we're trying to get on scene enough people to mitigate the hazard inside the hazard zone. Then we want appropriate amounts of crews on deck to look after the guys inside the hazard zone. And then we want people in staging to back all these guys up. So that's the 3 deep deployment model. We're trying to get 3 deep on every scene. Is it going to happen every time out there for us with our staffing and our coverage responsibilities? We'd like to get there, but I don't know if we'll quite get there every single time. But that's going to be our goal anyways. We're looking to get 3 deep. So you might want to ask, why are we not committed to having rapid intervention teams anymore? Well, of course, we still are committed to taking care of our folks in the hazard zone, and we want to have people there available to handle those issues should those arrive. But the fact is this: you can't ignore the statistics that are out there. So if you look at Project Mayday out there, some of you guys may already be on that website, but something around the line, it's right around 90% of all Maydays are addressed by the crews that are already inside the hot zone. So if we have a 3-man hose team, or maybe a 2-man hose team, and one guy pulling ceiling in front of them or something like that, and one of those guys has an emergency, those 2 guys that are there with him are typically going to perform that rescue. So having dedicated RIT teams on the outside aren't necessarily providing the benefit that we thought they were in the past. And if anybody has any questions or concerns about that, feel free to give any of us instructors a call. We have a lot of documentation on that, and we've studied a lot on it. And when you look at the numbers, it really makes sense. So these on-deck crews, just for clarification, they will have RIT equipment with them. It's just they may not be 100% dedicated to performing RIC functions like we have in the past. Well, who's going to soften the building? Well, all crews are going to be able to soften the building. It doesn't necessarily have to be the RIC team that's out there softening the building or sizing up the building. Everybody has the ability to do that. So that's kind of the thought process behind that. Again, understand if you have any concerns about that, if that just completely goes against your everything you believe in, feel free to give us a call. Myself, Chief West, Chief Lanier, Chief Davis, and Chief Caps will all be glad to sit down and talk to you about it and let you know our thought process. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Just some of that manpower issue, manpower aspects that we just discussed. We're going to kind of just walk through a little bit of a scenario here to kind of show you how we would deploy these folks and how it makes sense. So obviously we're going to call this a large building. Let's say we have an 80,000 square foot warehouse here with a fire kind of back in the Charlie Delta sides of the building. So obviously Engine 1 is going to get on scene first, and they're going to deploy their 3-man hose team. They're going to grab their water supply, grab a 3-man hose team, and they're going to make an interior attack, and they're going to go through the alpha side for fire control and primary search. All right, obviously they're going to get more personnel there. So now we're going to have the truck company come on. Now again, being this is an 80,000 square foot commercial occupancy, most likely want my truck company to go evaluate the roof for me. Okay, so what I would likely say to them is, Main Street Command to Truck 1, go ahead. Truck 1, spot to your best advantage and provide a roof report. Notice I didn't say ladder the building and provide a roof report. I didn't say deploy your ladder and give me a roof report. All I need to tell them is roof report. The truck captain on Truck 1, they're going to know how to get that roof report. All right, so that's what we're looking for. And roof report may be a term you're kind of unfamiliar with. Basically, what we're calling a roof report is a way to evaluate the roof. We're going to check the firewalls. We're going to check if there's any sagging in the roof. When I say check the firewalls, we want to make sure they're still intact. We want to see if there's any fire in the attic. We want to see if there's any abnormal roof loads, like, I don't know, some crazy, something I would want to know is on these newer buildings, and what if there could be, several rows of solar panels up there, as opposed to just what we normally have with the HVAC system. So those are the kind of things we would want to know in regards to roof reports. And we'll talk a little bit more about those as we go along as well. All right, so truck one's going to spot to their advantage, and they're going to provide a roof report. All right, so then we got more resources coming in. Engine two, we most likely would want them to help with fire attack. But if I look, I've already got a water supply, so I would tell Engine 2, command Engine 2, Main Street command Engine 2. Engine 2, go ahead. Engine 2, spot your apparatus out of the way, grab a second line off Engine 1, come inside the building off the Alpha side to assist with fire attack and primary search. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to cruise over here out of the way, park their apparatus out of the way. Don't want to clog up the scene. All right. And then they're going to get their personnel inside, take a second handle off Engine 1, then they're going to go try to address the fire concerns inside. All right, so now we still got more resources coming up. We got a battalion chief. He's spotting in a good location. He's got good eyes on the Alpha Delta sides of the building, and he's going to call Interior Command. He's going to get his rundown. He's going to compare what he sees to what Command tells him. And we'll get a little bit more into evaluating radio traffic a little bit more as we move along. But of course, right here at this point in time, now something I'm not sure if we're going to mention it up here a little bit later in the slideshow. I know we do in the main one, but something we have to be concerned about is we are relying on the first-in engine company officer to do what we call a size up +3. So the engine company officer is going to size up the building. We'll talk about that. He's going to be evaluating his critical factors, going to develop a risk management plan, and he's going to develop a strategy, all in the first couple of minutes within arrival. And then not only is he going to do that, he's going to assign 3 companies, be prepared to give assignments to 3 different companies. So in this case, what we're looking at, Engine 1, he's giving himself an assignment, he's giving Truck 1 an assignment, and he's giving Engine 2 an assignment. So that's your 3 assignments right there. That's what we call a size up +3. In a perfect world, by the time we have 3 assignments given out, the battalion chief will be on scene to coordinate, because after that it's going to get extreme, a little bit more chaotic and a little bit more complicated. So the battalion chiefs, as part of this program, they're doing their dead level best to be more responsive towards fires and to get on scene to take that burden off that initial engine company officer. So that's what's going on here. So battalion 1 has showed up. He's posted up on the Alpha Delta walls, and he's about to get a rundown from the interior crews from command to make a good effective transfer of command. All right, so Engine 3 piles up on the scene. So depending on how big this fire is, we got a choice to make as battalion chief. And this is based on the report you get from your interior crew. If that's a large fire and those guys on interior are getting their tails kicked in right now, I may choose to, maybe even choose to tell Engine 3 to get a second water supply and pull a line off their truck and go in for a fire attack. Or I may tell them to spot out of the way, and may tell them to spot out of the way and take a third line off Engine 1. It all depends on the size of the fire, okay? So what we chose in this scenario, they grabbed an additional water supply, and they're making access to the fire from a different side to try to help these guys. We're putting about 425 gallons a minute on this fire right now. Hopefully it should be close to getting out. All right, so then we're going to have one more apparatus get here, and that's Engine 4. Some of you guys are keeping up from home. You may figure out that Engine 4 may be a good spot to get your own deck crews going. All right. So Engine 4, we're going to spot their apparatus out of the way and put their personnel on deck at the Alpha side. All right. So, all right. So that's how we're going to work that scene. Okay. So on deck crew options, we'll talk about a few things in regards to on deck. Once a crew is assigned to an on deck position, they are first and foremost a RIC crew, all right, a rapid intervention crew, until they are assigned to relieve an existing crew in their assigned division, reinforce a bear with me just a second, I gotta get caught up here. All right, reinforcing a current position in their assigned division or cover a new position as assigned by the IC. What you'll see is as we get to our labs, folks, when you start going through the practicals on this, you'll see a nice little rotation begin to develop. You'll have your interior crews that are replaced by the on-deck crews. Then you have your on-deck crews replaced by the staging crews. And then you'll have, and that cycle just continues to repeat itself until the incident comes to some sort of fruition. And you'll get a little bit more better visual on that once we hit the labs in the next 6 weeks or so. So on deck, what's the benefits of on deck? They place the resources into the correct position prior to the need. You know, having a mayday go down and then getting the resources to deploy, you're kind of behind the 8 ball when that goes down, obviously. So having the resources there before the need is evident is huge. It just saves valuable seconds up to even minutes for us. Now, provides division officers sufficient resources to get the job done. It puts us in the best position to keep pace with or stay ahead of the instant problem power curve. Crews can have face-to-face meetings. We find it very beneficial when a crew is coming out to recycle or even go to rehab. They can have that face-to-face meeting with the on-deck crews right there at the door that they're making egress and access from. And it's very good communication. We're not relying on radios there, but that face-to-face is key. And having that on-deck crew right there meeting the interior crew as they come out is it's proven to be very beneficial. So it improves the standard work cycle, recycle versus rehab, and again, that's more of a visual thing that you'll see as you go through some of your labs. All right, and allows division officers to manage the details of their division, and crews assigned to on-deck positions are required to bring the RIC bag and spare air cylinders. So yeah, we're working on that. Again, some challenges. We got to work on some policies. You know, if we're going to go to this, system or this plan, it's not going to be very practical for us to work on deck crews only from truck companies. So we're going to get the right equipment where it needs to be and the right training where it needs to be as well, to make sure that all our crews out there have the capability to fill these positions effectively. So recycling is probably a new term for a lot of us. Recycling means it's a timely and efficient means of air replacement and rehydration of assigned companies while still maintaining their division assignment. So don't get bogged down by the division assignment wording there. Basically, you're still going to be in the warm zone. Typically, in times past, when we come out for a rehab, we come out, take our cylinder off, get a couple of bottles of water, and sit down for a breather. But recycling makes a little more sense for us. A lot of times, we still have work to do, basically, and we still have energy to burn, if you will. So just coming out, swapping cylinders, getting a quick bottle of water, and going back inside, that provides a lot of benefit for us, especially with our staffing needs, if you will. So recycling is something different. Recycling, we're going to stay pretty much in the warm zone. We're going to stay dressed out. Let somebody help us. Maybe the on-deck crew will help swap us a cylinder out, and then we're going to get right back inside. Now, that's different than rehab. Rehab's an actual assignment. You'll actually come out of the hot zone to a formal rehab location, and where members will decon and then be medically evaluated, rehydrated, and replenished. Once rehab, units can be assigned again to the incident scene, but most of the time we place back into service. Now, that's something we're still evaluating here in Cherokee County, but the intent is to, once you go to rehab, the intent is to get you off the scene and get you back to, get you deconned, or get you off the scene and back to the station where you can get properly deconned. Now, that obviously has to do with the needs of the scene. You know, if the needs of the scene is require you to remain on scene, then we're going to have to put you back in the division and get you back involved. But the point is, significant difference between recycle and rehab. All right, now here's our first look at a core component to Blue Card. It's the strategic decision-making model. This is a real good breakdown of how we typically, as incident commanders, um, make our decisions on how we're going to mitigate or address a particular fire scene. And most of us do this all the time. We evaluate our buildings. We look at our risk management plan to check our life safety profile to see if there's anybody salvageable, see if there's any property salvageable, and then we evaluate. Then we determine our strategy. Our old policy, it was our mode, offensive mode or defensive mode or marginal, and then we develop an incident action plan. Same thing here. It's just kind of broke down for us to easily visualize. So it's broken down into steps, obviously, but you can't really necessarily do one without doing the one before it first. So the very first step is critical fireground factors. We can't do anything on a fire scene until we evaluate our critical fireground factors. So what are our critical fireground factors? Well, we've conveniently put them on the screen for you here, so not too much guesswork involved. But a couple of things we need to know right off the bat is the building and the fire. In regards to the building, we need to know the size. How big is it? How many floors is it? And in regards to the fire, we're looking at size, location, and stage of development. Those are two critical things we need to know right off the bat, because that leads directly into our task math, which is how many people, what resources we need to actually mitigate the incident scene. So we need to know those pretty quick, and then go along with occupancy. Occupancy and life hazard kind of go together. So, you know, depending on what occupancy you're in, that can clue you into your life hazards. And of course, if we're doing our jobs, typically we know the occupancy upon dispatch or have some sort of pretty good idea. Now, in regard to life hazard, we always hear that the building's not clear until we search it and say it's clear. And that's true to a certain extent, but that's not to say that if the responsible party or a neighbor or a building occupant or a residence occupant, if they give you some sort of information, we need to take that. We don't want to take it to heart, but we need to file it away and consider it for later, because a lot of times they can have valuable information that can assist us as we work through the incident. Talking about arrangement has a lot to do with, again, has to do with task math as well, but it also has a lot to do with our IEP. What lines are we going to pull based on how the building is laid out? All right, if the fire is, if we've got the fire location in the back side of a, maybe it's just a 2,500 square foot building, but if the arrangement is such to where we can't access it very easily, we may need more manpower, we may need more equipment. Same thing with setbacks. Setback, a 75 foot or 100 foot setback from a building from the curb may prevent us from pulling a skid. May prevent us from pulling a pre-connect and may indicate a skid load right off the bat. We evaluate that quickly and effectively, then we can get to the seat of the fire quicker and put it out more efficiently. So then, we need to evaluate our resources, obviously, and we've talked about what resources are coming with this new program, how we got that laid out, our actions, and special circumstances as well. Special circumstances could have a lot to do with weather. If you have a 35-mile-an-hour wind on the top of a hill, a residential structure on top of a hill, that may affect your decision making. If you've never been involved in a very aggressive wind-driven fire, I guarantee you're involved in it. If you're involved in it one time, or you have to deal with it one time, you'll certainly consider it throughout the rest of your career. Another thing is traffic patterns. Certain festivals, we get 4th of July festivals and celebrations coming up this weekend, so we got roads shut down everywhere, large crowds everywhere. Those are certainly things to consider as we try to make access to these structures. So like we talked about on the previous slide, the building is the first critical factor we need to evaluate. The size, height, and occupancy type. All those things are going to give us lots of clues and help us evaluate our task math to make sure we get the right resources on the scene. It also starts to lead us into our risk management plan, our strategy declaration, as well as our IEP. All that starts with the building description. And one of the most important parts of that is size. So how do we determine the size of a particular structure? So in years past, this has been very objective. What is small to me may be medium to somebody else. Now, why is that important? Does everybody need to know how big or small or large a particular building is while they're en route? Well, yeah, it is important because it helps people develop the proper frame of mind. It helps people gain a mental image and prepare, and having that mental image in your mind helps you prepare for the task ahead. So all these verbal cues that we're given, it just sets us up for better success once personnel arrive on the scene to mitigate this particular incident. So just a couple of guidelines here that we've laid out. So from now, what we're going to call small, if your 200-foot hand line can access all four corners of the particular building, and you'll see here the building is actually the blue square right here. We're going to call that a small structure. All right. Now, moving right along, if our hand line can access approximately 75% of the building, of course it doesn't have to be exact, but about 75% of the building, we're going to call that a medium structure. And then around 50%, if your hand line can reach around 50% of the building, then we're looking at a large structure. And then if your hand line can access 25% or less of the particular occupancy, then we're going to use, here in Cherokee County, we're going to use the term mega. That will be a mega structure. All right, so in regards to height, we're going to use the number of stories to describe the above grade height of a structure, and use the number of sublevels such as basements and parking garages to describe the depth below grade of a structure. Now this is pretty straightforward until you consider all the apartments that we have. On the alpha side, it may look like it's 2 stories, but then on your walk around, it's actually 4 stories with the 2 floors below grade and a lower parking lot. So we all have some ideas on exactly how we're going to do that, but we haven't come up with a definite, surefire, concrete description of how we're going to work that out. But that will be policy driven. Once we come to a determination on that, we'll make sure to get that in policy and make sure we relay that information to everybody as we move along. So again, just like the size of the building is important, the height of a building is important as well. It lets everybody begin to prepare, build that mental image, and kind of get their mind right for the task ahead of them. For example, if you're on a truck company and the initial incident commander states he's on the scene of a large 2-story apartment building with a working fire on the 2nd floor, that should give you a pretty good idea that you're going to go to the roof for a roof report. All right, and that gives you an opportunity while en route to review those kinds of tactical objectives, maybe even get some preliminary assignments just to kind of shorten that reflex time once you arrive on scene. So this kind of thing is important for us. Still evaluating our critical fireground factors here. We're focusing on the occupancy type. 7 major or basic occupancy types that we're going to run into: residential, multi-unit residential, public assembly, strip malls, commercial, industrial, institutional, and high rises. Now this is not, by any means, this is not a comprehensive list. There are some more out there, but this is pretty much what we're going to run into. Now, each of these occupancy types, they present us with unique challenges as far as resources, as far as life safety profile and that kind of things. So I encourage you to do some, get out and do some investigation and do some riding around in your territory to see exactly what kind of structures you got out there. So just for the commercial and industrial types down in 19's first in, if you get a fire call. If you get a fire off of James Dupree out of one of those particular facilities down there, it may, and if you pull out of the station and see a thermal column, right off the bat you're probably going to need a lot of resources. Based on your what you're seeing and what you're getting on dispatch and this and that. So it may be worth considering going ahead and not only balancing that assignment, but upgrading that assignment. Again, that's what knowing your occupancy types can do for you. It helps you get resources to the scene quicker. All right, so now we come to the second phase of our, or second part of the system core here, the strategic decision-making model. So we've evaluated our critical fireground factors, and we're going to use that information to lead us into this second step here, which is our risk management plan. What does that consist of exactly? All right, so let's talk about our risk management plan. Apply the standard risk management plan throughout the incident. You know, this is not a one-time evaluation. You might have to do this evaluation multiple times as the incident progresses. Typically in a green scenario, we will risk our lives a lot to save savable lives, and we will risk our lives a little in a highly calculated manner to save savable property. We will not, however, risk our lives at all for what is already lost, people or property. Now keep in mind, every one of these talks about risking our lives. All right. And the point I want to make here, we in Cherokee County, we're not going to use this as a crutch. There are still things to be done on a fire scene, folks, regardless of where you're at on your risk management plan. If we're down here in the red, we've evaluated. We haven't evaluated. Our evaluation leads us to believe that there's no savable lives, there's no savable property. There are still things to get done to mitigate that fire scene. The point is we're not going to be risking our lives to get that done. The lives, we're not risking our lives. That's the operative word in all these three statements right here. Okay. Now, how do you make this evaluation? I mean, how do you decide if something is savable or not? Well, basically, there's three things: training, education, and experience. Those three different legs is what holds the stool up for risk management. All right. If you don't have a lot of experience, you probably need more training. If you have a lot of experience, then you might not need so much formal education. So that's got to be in your wheelhouse right there to figure out what you need. Now we're going to provide you the training, and we're going to provide you the education, the experience. That's up to you guys to develop. You know. So back to our strategic decision-making model here again, one of the system cores, the blue card. We've hit our critical fireground factors. We've worked through our risk management plan. Our next step here is the strategy. And here's one of the key differences in blue card and the way we do business now. The way we do business now, we operate in modes of operation. So offensive, defensive, and marginal modes of operation. With blue card, we're going to transition into just two strategies. That's offensive and defensive strategies. Either we are we're aggressively putting the fire out for offensive, or we are waiting for the fire to come to us and kind of drawing a line in the sand and not letting the fire get any worse or get any further, which would be defensive. So a little different there than what we've done in the past, but it's an easy change. I think it makes a lot of sense for this program for how we do business. So, okay, so the incident commander uses incident critical factors and risk management plan to determine the overall incident strategy. All right, so offensive inside, defensive outside. I kind of told you a little bit about my perspective on that. We do allow Blue Card Command does. I don't want to say this the wrong way, but Blue Card Command does account for what we would typically in the past have called a transitional attack. If we use a transitional attack, technically we're still offensive, all right? But if we're letting the fire come to us, all right, if we're not doing anything with the fire until it gets to us, then we're defensive. And we'll show a little bit more about that as we move on. Okay, so then we're going to implement an IEP that matches the overall strategy, offensive strategy versus defensive strategy. Offensive strategy, members will enter the hot zone to control the incident problems. We've got a good little example of this here on the left, and then on the defensive strategy, members will not enter the property to control the incident. All right, so here's the thing about defensive and offensive. Why do we say that? I mean, why do we need to say offensive and defensive strategies? There's been a lot of people killed, folks, and obviously a lot of line of duty deaths, obviously over my career especially, and I'm sure there's been a few over y'all's careers. Try to do what I can to kind of study and learn about that, and learn from all those circumstances. But a lot of times, if you look at those line of duty death reports, a lot of times you'll see the first or second top, and they put like a little list on there of what contributed to the circumstances that caused the firefighter to lose their life. And usually, for years, the top three was operating in an offensive posture on a defensive fire. And when they get to interviewing folks, why were you doing that? Well, because they didn't know that they didn't know a defensive situation had been called. So everybody on that fire scene needs to know what strategy you're working in. It's just crucial for helping folks stay safe on these fires. So we need to make sure we make a good declaration of our strategy so everybody's aware of it. Okay. So offensive tactical priorities. Number one is fire control. Here's another one that may elicit some phone calls, and we're ready to take them whenever if you're ready to place them. So, but offensive tactical priorities is fire control. The bottom line is the science is out there, and we're believers in science. The science is out there that you put the fire out, things get better. There's multiple NIST videos out there. There's multiple research papers out there that corroborate this. There's just no arguing anymore. A lot of money has been thrown at this in the form of grants to figure out if this is actually true. And although we want people inside to get people out as quick as possible, at the end of the day, fire control is the most important. Get water on the fire, and it improves the environment time and time again. So keep that in mind. Fire control is our initial priority. Now, we're not saying we're going to leave people inside there. Don't make no mistake about that. But fire control is our priority, and most of the time, in simultaneous fashion, we'll be conducting a search, getting folks out. So our third priority is ventilation, and then we're going to move on to secondary searches, and then loss control, and then firefighter decon. Okay, so managing the fire, control benchmarks, working fire. This is how we're going to describe an incident scene. The working fire, the incident will require at least the commitment of all units dispatched on the original assignment, and our SOPs dispatch additional resources when declared. Whenever, for example, like when I was showing you balancing the alarm and things of that nature. So, and then knockdown means the main body of the fire has been controlled, but the 7 sides have not been verified for fire extension. So you crawl down the hallway and you got a 2-room and contents fire, and you put the bulk of the fire out. You've knocked the fire down. What we can typically, well, in times past, some people would say that they had the fire blacked out or things of that nature. When you get that initial knockdown, it's acceptable to this is one of the benchmarks. That initial knockdown is one of the benchmarks we're looking for. Then after that, once the fire's been controlled and we have evaluated the 7 sides of the fire for fire extension, then you've got a pretty good idea that there's no more fire. You're not going to need any more resources or anything of that nature. Then we're going to call fire is under fire control. Then we're going to call fire control. Now, once we've met all our tactical benchmarks, primary searches, and all that good stuff has been accomplished, and we decide that we need no more resources, then we're going to call the incident under control. So those are the 4 different phases of the incident that we're going to need to report as we move throughout this incident. So whenever possible, prior to making an offensive entry, a mobile incident commander shall perform a 360-degree assessment of the fire building area to further determine the fire's size, location, and extent. So this is huge. Obviously, it says it here in red for a reason. Also, it says it out there to the side that it's huge for a reason. So we're going to talk about task math a little bit down the line. Task math is nothing more than the initial incident commander deciding what kind of resources he's going to need. All right, so that's one thing. This first step right here is huge in determining the amount of resources you're going to need. Obviously, a bigger fire means more people. Obviously, a fire that's in a hard to reach area, hard to locate, or hard to get to, hard to access is going to require more people. And also extent, how far along is the fire? How long it's been burning? All these things are critical. They go hand in hand with trying to determine or figure out most of our critical fireground factors. So the ventilation profile of the structure, we need to identify the flow paths, life safety profile of the building, if there are people inside or not, and if they are they salvageable? We're going to verify the basement type and the stories from the Charlie side. Look out window wells, walk out basement or no basement or slab or something along those lines. Those are all things we need to evaluate. Those are all critical fireground factors that need to be addressed. And then the safest, most appropriate attack position, which is not always the alpha side. A lot of times the skid load around to the Charlie side for entry is the safest, most effective route. So consider that. And then we're going to confirm the initial strategy, all right, which is obviously offensive or defensive. Okay, defensive tactical positions. So we're going to define our hazard zone first off. Define what area we're going to be working in. That's going to be including our collapse zones and our actual hot zone, if you will. So make sure to include the hazard zone, the collapse zone in that. When I was younger, we was always taught time and a half, but I think there's been some discrepancies there in the recent past where time and a half hasn't been enough room. So consider establishing a collapse zone twice the height of the structure that you're operating in. Also need to establish cutoffs. How far are we going to let this fire get to? I know we had the fire down in Bridge Mill a few years ago. The real estate office, I believe it was, in Bridge Mill a few years ago, we actually had to make this determination where we pretty much had to establish the cutoff and let the fire basically burn to us in a defensive fashion. So now we also need to make sure we search exposures, primary and secondary, get all clears. Just because we are defensive in the primary fire occupancy, which we would call the alpha occupancy, just because we're defensive there doesn't mean we're defensive on the whole entire incident scene. Remember the exposures, especially if you're in a strip mall of some sort. If the fire was in the subway at the strip mall, be sure to search the nail salon and the hair care center on the Bravo and Charlie sides for occupants in there as well. So then we're going to protect those exposures as well. So keep in mind your defensive tactical priorities. All right, defensive water applications, master streams are the most effective tactic. Command must consider air rod application versus ground operated master stream devices. It just keeps us out of the collapse zone. We have the opportunity to put the ladder trucks up to flow big water now. We have that ability, I should say. So we got to consider that, especially for defensive posture, defensive strategy, excuse me. Standard master stream is 750 gallons per minute, and that should be the standard guideline that we operate by. Small diameter hand lines are not directly protecting exposure, should be shut down. And again, if I was in class, I would ask somebody, I would ask you guys why that is. Why do we need to ensure that we shut those small diameter lines down if they're not being used directly? And basically, here's the deal. When firefighters get their hand on a nozzle, they want to flow it. And when they want to flow the water, they inevitably, if you watch it, I've seen it several times, and the pattern obviously develops. If they open it up, they instinctively start stepping up and getting closer to the house or to the fire. So just to prevent that temptation, especially if you don't need the water, go ahead and make sure we shut those lines down to eliminate that kind of creep up effect. So once exposure protection is established, attention may be directed to knocking down the main body of the fire and cooling the thermal column. So here we are at our task level right here. We're going to talk about some different levels within our incident command structure. So then we have, obviously here on the left side right here, we have the hot zone and the warm zone. So we have The captain, it shows here the captain's responsible for this kind of 16-foot area. And then you got each firefighter responsible for the 6-foot area in there. So they're actually at the task level. They're actually performing the work. You company officers out there, you should be familiar about this kind of thing from the company officer manual. So responsibilities of the company officer, follow the SOPs, obviously. The SOPs are out there. They're going to be updated. But the SOPs are out there to give you a guideline to operate by and a framework to work within. And make a note here, they say that it allows you to get into the game properly. I've heard many times throughout my career, as the first line goes, so goes the fire. Basically, that's what they're saying here. If you get into the game in a proper fashion, then you're going to be successful most of the time, or at least not going to be caught off guard. If you don't get into the game in the proper fashion, if you have issues getting your first line or getting into the game, it's really just almost impossible to catch up as the incident progresses. You always feel like you're behind the 8 ball. I'm sure some of you more experienced guys out there have had a couple of fires like that. You just never really hit your comfort zone. So make sure we're going to follow our SOPs and we're going to get into the game properly. Now, they are also responsible for managing the crew's accountability through voice, vision, or touch. Everybody's got a thermal imaging camera with them these days. You should have it. Wear it inside. That's a great way for accountability, to enhance your accountability. Talking to them, touching them, staying on the hose lines, those kind of things. We're going to maintain that level of accountability. We make a point here to say that you have a round-trip ticket inside the hazard zone. That means if you go in, you come out, basically. So and that's what we're trying to accomplish here with Blue Card, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here with the policies that we're updating. We're trying to make sure that you guys have make sure that everyone has a round trip ticket to the hazard zone and then back home, out and back home. Make sure that all members stay on the hose line within reason. If you have some sort of visual contact in there, that might be able to be stretched a little bit, but the bottom line is that's up to the captain's discretion or the officer's discretion. Your maximum distance inside is 175 feet. Basically, that has to do with your hose line. That's 175 feet minus a 25-foot setback, which is the structure from the curb. It's typically about 25 feet in most cases. So that's your maximum distance. If you need to go further, you need to find another way in. That's where the incident commander, the initial commander, that captain here on the inside, he's got to evaluate the size of the structure from the very beginning. All right. And then if he can't get to where he needs to get with his hose line, he's calling somebody else and letting the second do and letting them know where to come in from so he can effectively cover the interior of that structure. His responsibilities are also managing the crew's work cycle and always keeping the crew intact. That is the responsibilities of the task level officer. So talk a little bit here about the order model. Basically, the order model is a specific blueprint of how we're going to communicate. This is how we're going to communicate on the radio from once we implement this program. And so basically what it says here is the sender contacts receiver. The receiver states the readiness to receive, and the sender transmits the message or the order. And then the receiver briefly restates the message to confirm understanding the message. And then, should the need arise, the sender corrects any misunderstanding of the message. Now, here's the key. Properly following the order model will reduce the overall amount of radio traffic, enhance accountability process, and it will prevent deployment mistakes and directional mistakes in freelancing. So here's the thing. When I first got involved in this program, it was hard for me to do the order model because I didn't think it was. I was always taught to be brief on the radio, as brief as possible. All right, well, being brief on the radio is all fine and good until somebody misunderstands your order or direction. So when somebody comes back to you and says, "Hey, I didn't understand that traffic," or "Tell me that again. I didn't understand the intent behind it." That's not becoming brief. That's not brief anymore. In fact, it's becoming delayed. It's causing more problems. So what we're looking at here is basically a line of communications, form of communications along this line. So step one would be engine one to engine two. Step two would say engine two, go ahead, because he is stating, that states his readiness to receive. And then I'm going to, as a sender, I'm going to transmit the message. I say, start from step one to engine two, go ahead. Engine two, spot your apparatus out of the way. Grab a second hand line off engine one, come in through the alpha side for fire attack and primary search. So as the receiver of that message, I'm going to restate that message. I'm going to say engine two's clear, spotting apparatus out of the way, grabbing a second hand line off engine one, advancing to through the alpha side for fire attack and primary search. And if you notice, and then that'll be the end of the transmission. There's no 10-4s in there. There's no okay, or there's no that's correct. Yes, sir, that's correct. There's no please. There's no thank yous, and we'll get involved. We'll get into that a little bit later. But if he repeats that message back to you and it's spot on, there's no reason to confirm it again. There's no reason to say thank you. No reason to say okay or good job, let's go get it, or whatever. No reason for that additional traffic. All right. Order model is very, very important. I've seen it time and time again working through this process over the last 18 months. If you don't follow this model right here, things get missed. And what is the most important thing that can get missed? I'll go ahead and answer for you. It's a mayday. There is never an acceptable time to miss a mayday. And there's never, that's just, at the end of the day, there's never an acceptable time to miss a mayday. Following this order model prevents it. We've seen it in class. We've seen it out in Phoenix when we went out to class in Phoenix. People not following the order model miss different communications. So I can't stress this enough. And the battalion chiefs have been instructed, once we go live with this project, once we implement this project, everybody has been instructed to be listening out for the proper use of the order model. Not to smack anybody's hands, but listen, at the end of the day, we are we have a playbook that we're going by, and the playbook, on the front of that playbook, it says addressing the mayday. We are trying to make sure that we address maydays. Following this order model is very important for that process. All right, there are 6 standard types of radio transmissions. We've got standard highlighted up there because, I mean, that's exactly what it means. It's standard. I'm not going to say there's never a time to say something else, but these are 6 standard types of radio transmissions. What we have is the initial radio report, and we'll have the follow-up report after that. Now, number 1 and number 2 there, the initial radio report and the follow-up report, typically in the past, that's what we've called our size up. So those two together, 1 and 2, that's going to constitute our size up. Now, when we are assigning units to operating positions or to different functions, that's radio traffic that we will be using as well. Command transfers, CAN reports, which is what we call conditions, actions, and needs, and strategic shifts. Those are the 6 standard types of radio transmissions we're going to see we're going to hear on an incident scene. So on the previous slide, talking about the 6 standard types of radio transmissions, number 5 on the list was your CAN reports. So we'll talk a little bit more about CANs, dive into that a little bit deeper. So we're talking about conditions, actions, and needs. This is a standard form of communication to efficiently package and deliver the type of environment you're working in, to communicate that environment to the battalion chief on the exterior. So one of the main parts of Blue Card, again, talking about the playbook, on the front of the playbook, we're trying to address the maydays. We're trying to keep radio traffic clear to address maydays appropriately. And one of the ways we do that is battalion chiefs, or the captains riding up in the battalion chief spot, they're going to be primarily working from the interior of their vehicle, all right, to eliminate distractions and things along that manner. Again, to stay available for that mayday. Again, there's no excuse to be missing maydays on the radio, so we want to make sure we have our folks prepared and in the right position to properly receive that information. So they're going to be working from the battalion chief's vehicles. All right, so how are we able to address an incident scene and properly run an incident scene from inside a vehicle, uh, as opposed to continually walking around the incident and being accessible to everybody like we have in times past? Well, one of the big parts of that is your CAN reports. So the battalion chief is going to set up in a strategic position, place his vehicle in a position to where he can actually get a good view of the incident scene. Now, your CAN reports, coupled with what he is seeing from his vehicle, that's going to go a long way into to continuing to revise the incident action plan that we have in place. So, you relaying the conditions inside your environment is very important to how this scene is going to progress. So we got a couple of examples here on this slide. Current location, your all clear progress, where you're at in your primary search, and what kind of needs you have, such as reinforcement, relief, exit, or support work. All those things are very important. So a couple of examples we got here that we use a lot, that we see makes a lot of sense. We think makes a lot of sense. All right, maybe your conditions, actions, and needs. Your CAN report might include something like this, something along the lines of you have low heat, good visibility, applying water with good effect. You have no needs. Notice if you don't have any needs, you need to say you have no needs. If you don't say that, if you just omit that part, the person receiving the radio traffic is going to wonder if you forgot to mention your needs, or if you actually, in fact, don't have any needs. So it's important, if you don't have any needs, to state that you have no needs. So a couple of different examples. We have high heat, low visibility, applying water with little effect. We need a second crew interior with a hand line to assist with fire attack. All right. So those are some good. So those are some examples of some good cans. Examples of some bad cans. Some things that we've said in the past. We're making good headway. We're making good progress. Need some help in here. Go in there and see what you can do with the fire. Send somebody in to help us out. That's not a good can. Those are all kind of parts of cans, but they all need to be packaged appropriately, so we have all the information we need. Every time we open that radio, every time we're going to open that radio link to communicate, we need to get all three of this particular radio traffic. We need to give our conditions, actions, and needs. If we're going to open up the radio traffic and kind of block access to the mayday, if you will, we need to make sure we're making good use of that radio time. Okay, so here we are back to our strategic decision-making model once again. We've been on this slide a few times. So up to this point, we've evaluated our critical fireground factors, basically our building and our fire. We've established our risk management plan. Either we're risking a lot to save a lot, risking a little to save a little. And then we've developed our strategy, offensive versus defensive. And now we're going to start. We've also talked a little bit about how we're going to talk on the radio, what kind of information we're going to give on the radio, and now we're going to progress into making our incident action plan, our IAPs. Okay, so the first step of establishing our incident action plan is to describe the problem. All right, either we have fire, we don't have fire. We have smoke, we don't have smoke. Maybe we have defensive fire conditions, but the first thing we got to do is be able to evaluate the fire. So there are 4 standard narratives to describe our fire conditions. All right, and if you notice on our tactical worksheet, these are also on our tactical worksheet. So we have nothing showing, light smoke showing, working fire, or defensive fire conditions. So on this particular simulation that I have going on the slide here, this would be light smoke showing. I think it would be light smoke showing. There may be a little fire looking out of there now that I look a little bit closer, but regardless, working fire with smoke showing from the alpha side right here. That's pretty much describing our problem. Okay, so at this point in our IAP, we've described our problem. We determine that we do have fire showing or we don't have fire showing. We determine the extent and the location of the fire. Next thing we got to do is start assigning companies to tasks to make sure we can get this incident under control. So So how do we do that? Again, just so what we're looking at is a specific way of assigning companies to their prospective jobs to make sure we come under control or get this situation under control. So what we're looking at is the task of the unit. All right, so it needs to be unit capable. Don't send engine 21 to the roof when you have truck 21 on the scene. All right, and then the location of those tasks and the objectives of the tasks. We call these TLOs, and you'll see them laid out nice and neat on your tactical worksheet. All right, are we going to pull a line? That's a task. Are we going to lay a supply line? That's a task. Are we going to do venting or search? Again, that's a task. Stretch a line through the front door. That's a task and location. Stretch a line through the front. Stretch a line through the front door on a correction. Stretch a line through the alpha side for primary search and fire control. That's task, location, and objective. All these are very important to give. Again, if you give clear direction from the beginning with TLOs, task, locations, and objectives, typically there's no confusion. You don't have a lot of people calling back and saying, do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? You get it right out the bat, right off the bat, right out the front door. So right off the get-go, I should say. So just like cans are extremely important, TLOs are extremely important as well with this framework of communication. Okay, so we need to get away from from the old way of doing things, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody else. We need to get away from the old way of doing things, which used to be pull a hand line, go inside, and see what you can get done, see what you can do, see if you can put this fire out. We've heard that a lot around here, but it doesn't give anybody really clear communication on how to complete their respective task. Okay, so when we're assigning our tasks, we need to keep in mind that assigning these certain tasks, they come with certain benchmarks after them. So if you're assigned fire attack, you can expect to get called back with a status change, and we'll talk about status change a little later on. But when fire attack's going good, you can expect to get a status change when that fire becomes under control. Same thing with your primaries or secondaries. Again, that task is not completed until you get an all clear. And the same with loss control. Loss control, if you're assigned loss control, you can expect to give a status change once that loss is stopped. In other words, once we've evaluated all 7 sides of that particular room or particular building. So moving along down our tactical worksheet here, we come to the part of our initial radio report. We need to determine or make a determination on our resources that we're going to require on scene. So as an incident commander, as an engine company officer, truck company officer, doing your initial radio report from the cab of the truck, you've done your task math, and you decide what kind of personnel you're going to need. So we got 4 options here that we're going to utilize here in the county. So we can cancel the assignment, which is if you get there and maybe have a little can job or something just your personnel can handle, feel free to cancel the assignment, get everybody else back in service. Now, holding the assignment, our second option. All right, maybe it's a 1 or 2 room and contents fire. You're going to need your engine, the second due and the third due engine, and maybe the truck company and battalion chief to take care of this incident. Then you would want to hold that assignment. Now, keep in mind that's not going to give you the balance. If you want the balance of the assignment, you need to say that. You need to say that you're going to need the balance on that particular incident scene. So the balance will get you your 2 more engines, a truck company, another truck company, another squad, the MedCon and service truck, and all that good stuff. So, and remember, the balance of the assignment, they're going to go to level 1 staging. All right. And the reason I mention that is because if you have the need to strike second alarms, they're going to go obviously to level 2 staging, just like we've discussed earlier. So when you strike that second alarm, be sure to include in that strike, be sure to include a level 2 staging area. As an incident commander, we don't need our resources scattered out and about everywhere. We need everybody in a particular location, because it's a little bit easier for us to manage that, and it allows everybody to get in the game a little bit more quicker and efficiently. So with that being said, if you arrive on scene and you feel the need to strike a second alarm, to make sure everybody gets in the proper place, the proper location, because we have 2 different staging areas between the balance and the additional alarms. To make sure everybody gets to the proper location, you need to always make sure, we've made the determination that we want everybody to always make sure the response is balanced before we strike second alarms. So the radio traffic would go something like this: engine 1 to Cherokee, engine 1 go ahead. Cherokee needs you to balance this assignment and then strike a third alarm. That's how that would go. You can go to any alarms that you want to go to. You don't have to go to the second, third, fourth, or fifth alarm consequently or consecutively to get the personnel you need. The only thing we need you to do is to balance the assignment first, because that's very important, because that gets personnel to the proper staging locations. And hope I didn't twist you up in knots right there. If I did, rest assured we'll get you sorted out when it comes to doing the labs. Whenever we get to doing that, it makes a little more sense whenever we do the labs and actually talking on the radio. Okay, so here's an actual picture of our tactical worksheet. We just pretty much worked through our initial radio report, which is the top left box. The only thing we really didn't cover, which is we've been doing it for years, is actually assuming and naming command here at the end. So the tactical worksheet, it follows right along with our strategic decision-making model. So here's what we just went through in the green here. We've evaluated our critical fireground factors. So we've evaluated our building size and description. So we've evaluated how big, how many stories, occupancy type, and the problem description: smoke showing, nothing showing, defensive fire, working fire, and the location of the problem. Those are all critical fireground factors, and they're the first ones in the box for a reason, because we can't really do anything in regards to this incident until we address our critical fireground factors. All right, so if you look, all this goes right along with the strategic decision-making model we've been focused on to this point. So critical fireground factors, our risk management plan factors into our strategy right here, offensive or defensive, and then we're going to put together our incident action plan. All right, and don't forget, within our incident action plan is very important, our TLOs, task location objectives. Okay, engine 1 to engine 2. Engine 2, go ahead. Engine 2, spot your apparatus out of the way. Grab a second line off of engine 1. Advance through the alpha side for primary search and fire attack. Remember, TLOs is key right there. If I give those orders, or engine 1 to truck 1, go ahead. Truck 1, spot your apparatus to your best advantage and provide a roof report. If I give those TLOs right there, those task location objectives, there's no confusion as to what I'm supposed to do. I've given you my expectations as an incident commander, and I've given you tasks that can actually be accomplished. All right. So working through this tactical worksheet on initial radio report is very important. Okay, so since we've kind of got a little bit of a foundation being built right now with our tactical worksheets and initial radio reports, we're going to take the opportunity to work through a few scenarios using our tactical worksheet. So, and as we work through this, just keep in mind that strategic decision-making model, starting out with your evaluating your critical fireground factors, evaluating your risk management plan, your strategy declaration, and your IEP, your incident action plan. So we'll get started with our first little scenario here. We've got a little structure fire, smoking fire showing on the main fire occupancy, and it's extended to the second floor of the delta side exposure. You know, at first glance, this might look like a pretty complex issue, but if we break it down, start with our critical fireground factors, you'll actually see things kind of take place, and everything kind of just falls into place right nicely with this communication program. So looking at the building, we'll just go right through our tactical worksheet here. We'll see we got a small 2-story house. All right, we have a working fire with smoke showing from the alpha side. We're going to lay our own supply line. We'll stretch a hand line through the delta side for a quick hit. Then we're going to reposition to the alpha side for primary search and fire attack. All right, putting all this together, you know, we evaluated our critical factors through this part right here. We've evaluated our critical fireground factors. We've evaluated a risk management plan. So now we're ready to establish our strategy. All right, so obviously we're going to be in the offensive strategy here. Depending on what you think your resources are, I think on this one we'll go ahead and balance the alarm, and then we'll establish Main Street Command. All right, so let's run through the radio traffic here and see See what that sounds like. Engine 1, Cherokee.
Cherokee Engine 1.
Engine 1's on the scene of a small 2-story house. Have a working fire with smoke showing from the alpha side with extension to the second story of the delta side exposure. Engine 1 will be laying their own supply line, stretching the hand line to the delta side for quick hit, reposition to the alpha side of the primary fire occupancy for primary search and fire attack. We'll be in the offensive strategy, balance this alarm, establishing Main Street command.
Dispatch is clear. You have a small 2-story house with a working fire, smoke showing on alpha side with exposure into delta side exposure 1. You'll be laying supply line, stretching skid load for quick hit before making entry through alpha side first floor for fire attack, primary search. We'll be on offensive strategy, balancing assignment, your Main Street command.
Okay, so that's pretty much how it goes right there. You see the dispatcher does a pretty good job of repeating back what we say. That's how we're going to get this program to work for us. Is we're going to get the dispatchers to repeat everything back. It not only confirms what we say, but it allows everybody else that's coming to the fire to kind of get a good idea in their head of what's going down. Paints a good picture for everybody else coming along behind you. So the dispatcher may not always get everything exactly the same, but as long as they get things mostly correct, it's okay. You got to remember the dispatchers, they're not familiar with how we do business out here, just like they're not familiar with how we do business in there. So keep in mind, if it's not exactly right, we don't need to freak out on the radio. But if there is a significant deviation from your plan, you may feel the need to correct that. Okay, so in an effort to demonstrate that this program works for multiple different occupancies and different types of environments, different levels of involvement, we're going to use our tactical worksheet once again on this particular structure, evaluating the same things, looking at our critical fireground factors such as size, height, and occupancy type, size of the building, the height of the building, and the occupancy type. We're going to describe our smoke and fire conditions, locate the fire, and then give our initial assignments and declare our initial action plan, and then determine our strategy. So in an effort to demonstrate how this communication plan can be applied or is applicable to many different scenarios and occupancy types, we're going to work through our multifamily sim here. So, you pull up on this, it could be intimidating for a lot of folks, especially for some folks that don't have a lot of experience riding on the seat. But again, just like anything else, we're going to start out, with evaluating our critical fireground factors. We're going to start out here with the building. So we're going to describe the building, what kind of building we're looking at here. So we're going to call this medium-sized building. Again, I don't have much of a view over to the screen right. I see what looks to be maybe a firewall up there, but it also could be a parapet, because if you look on the left side. So anyways, bottom line is, if what I see on the right side is a parapet wall, I feel pretty confident calling this a medium-sized structure based on that. Again, that could change if I get a bigger view or on my walk around or this or that, but for right now, I'm going to call it a medium-sized structure. It's 3 stories, all right, apartment complex. So there is a difference between an apartment and an apartment complex. Apartment complexes are something like River Ridge or Alexander Ridge. So pieces of property that have multiple buildings on multiple apartments on that particular piece of property, we're going to call those apartment complexes. Now, standalone apartments, such as what you might see behind the old Pizza Hut in Canton and 16's First Inn, I believe it's called Northwoods Apartments up on the hill like that, I would probably call that just an apartment. Again, differences there. It just helps the folks coming behind you get into game a little bit better. So proper terminology right here can be important in the long run. All right, moving on to our IEP, we're going to describe our fire and describe our problem, which evaluates our fire. So we have a working fire, smoke showing from the Charlie side from all 3 floors. Calling this the Charlie side, looks like the Charlie side from me. I don't see any entrances to any breezeways. I see a meter box back here indicating what would to me would be the back of the building. And then we had the patios on back. So I'm gonna call it the Charlie side. Again, if you want to call it the Alpha side, that's fine. Just make sure you stay consistent throughout the whole incident. All right. So we have so our IAP here. We're going to lay a supply line. We're going to deploy a skid load to the Charlie side for a quick hit, and then we're going to reposition to the Alpha side for primary search and fire attack. All right. Once we've evaluated all this, our critical fireground factors, we evaluated our risk management plan. We've deciding that you know there is a survivable condition inside this building. So we're going to say we're going to be in the offensive strategy. We'll balance this alarm, and then we'll establish Main Street Command. Okay. So let's see what that sounds like on the radio. Did you want a Cherokee?
Cherokee Engine 1.
Engine 1's on the scene of a medium, 3-story apartment complex. Have a working fire with smoke showing from the Charlie side. Engine 1 will be laying a supply line, deploying a skid load to the Charlie side for a quick hit, and reposition to the Alpha side for primary search and fire attack. We'll be in the offensive strategy, balance the alarm, establishing Main Street Command.
Cherokee's clear. You have a medium 3-story apartment with a working fire from Charlie side. You'll be laying line, stretching and skid load for a quick hit on Charlie side prior to making entry through Alpha side first floor for primary search fire attack. It'll be offensive strategy. A balancer is finding your Main Street Command.
Okay, so that's how we're working through the initial radio report on our multifamily unit here. So again, getting into the game is important. Initial radio reports, evaluating our critical fireground factors and evaluating our fire is huge. That just allows everybody to get in the game. It just allows everybody to be on the same page and be a little bit more efficient once they get on scene. Okay, so we're going to take this opportunity to work through a little strip mall scenario right here as far as just with our initial radio reports goes. In regards to strip malls, we do have a little bit of a different way of communicating, or let me say this, a little bit better laid out way of communicating various occupancies within the strip mall. So check this slide out here. So you had the main fire occupancy right here in the middle, obviously. All right, so take note of how we're describing these different exposures. So we had the Alpha side right here. This would obviously be the Charlie side back here, and then we have the Bravo 1, 2, and 3 exposures, and then the Delta 1, 2, 3, and 4 exposures. So just as we get inside working in these occupancies, sometimes it can get a little, I don't know what the word is, confusing, if you will, based on where you're at. If you're in the center occupancy, there isn't much you can do as far as how we're going to address that. We got the main fire occupancy and the Bravo 1, 2, and 3 exposures. But however, if you were to find yourself operating in this area right here, all right, operating in this area right here, this is where your fire's at, okay, and you want, that's some good looking smoking flames coming out of there. And if you want somebody to come check this location, if you want somebody to come check that location right here on the end, which was what we would probably call Bravo 1 if the fire was here. Technically, it's Bravo 1 exposure. But if you wanted to come check that area, and then you want another crew to come check this area, all right, it's acceptable to refer to this area as the little end and this area as the big end, because sometimes as we're inside working, we kind of forget exactly where we are in the building as far as Charlie side, Bravo side, Alpha side. So don't want to confuse anybody. We want to make it as simple as possible. Again, simple communications means a clear radio. We want to keep that radio traffic clear. So feel free to refer to this as the little end and big end as needed. Now, of course, it's got to do where your main fire's at, but just wanted to throw that out there before we started working through the scenario with our tactical worksheet. Okay, so we're going to work through our strip mall scenario here. Pretty much your standard strip mall. You see them all over the United States, and we have hundreds of them here in Cherokee County. Had a few fires in some strip malls. We've done pretty good to this point. Hope to keep it that way in regards to that. Now, at first glance, this fire in these type structures may look a little intimidating. You know, there are certain challenges, a lot of challenges we have to address. A lot of things we have to evaluate inside an occupancy of this type while it's on fire. But again, we're going to break it down into. We're going to start with our critical fireground factors, starting with the building to help get us started here and to get us into the game correctly. All right, so going over to our tactical worksheet, we're going to look. We're going to see we have a medium, one-story strip mall. Now I call this a medium. I want to make this point here. Even though it's a center occupancy, what's burning on this, it's on fire here, we still want to treat it as if we still want to prepare for if the whole building was actually on fire. So if we have multiple occupancies on under one roof, we're going to deploy our tactics based on that one whole structure there, as opposed to just one small center occupancy. What are we looking at here in this center occupancy? Maybe 900 square feet. Obviously, that would be a small, but we're probably looking at, if you got 4, 5, 6 different occupancies in here, you can be looking upwards 5,500 to 6,000 square feet. You need to consider that when we're describing these buildings. All right, so I'm going to call this a medium one. I feel like I can get pretty decent coverage with a hand line. So again, this is it's medium one-story strip mall, have a working fire, smoke showing from the alpha side center occupancy. Be as descriptive as you can. If it's a center occupancy, say it's a center occupancy. All right, again, helping everybody get into the game a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficiently. All right, again, working fire, smoke showing from the alpha side center occupancy with Bravo and Delta exposures. Mention those exposures. That's a big part of this. All right. So, and then we're going to get into our incident action plan. We've evaluated our building. We've evaluated our fire. We've got the location, the general location of the fire, at least from what we can tell from the front seat of the engine. All right. So then we're going to get into our IEP. So we're going to lay a supply line, stretch a hand line to the alpha side for primary search and fire attack. All right. After we've evaluated everything, we know what our incident action plan is going to be. We're going to declare that we're in the offensive strategy. We'll balance this alarm, and we're going to establish Main Street Command. All right, so we'll see what that sounds like on the radio. Engine 1 to Cherokee.
Cherokee Engine 1.
Engine 1 is on the scene of a medium, one-story strip mall. Have a working fire with smoke showing from the alpha side center occupancy with Bravo and Delta exposures. Engine 1 will be laying their own supply line, stretching a hand line to the alpha side for primary search and fire attack. Be an offensive strategy. Balance this alarm, establishing Main Street Command.
Dispatch is clear. You have a medium one-story strip mall with smoke showing center occupancy alpha side with exposures Bravo Delta side. You'll be laying a line, stretching a line to the alpha side. Primary search. You'll be an offensive strategy. The balance of the assignment will be Main Street Command.
Okay, so that's our initial radio report for our strip mall scenario. Again, if you look at it, just breaking things down, evaluating your critical factors, such as your building and the location of the fire. Challenging fires such as this can be broken down into very manageable type scenarios. So we've drilled down pretty hard on our initial radio report on our technical worksheets. So now we're going to start hitting the follow-up report. Remember, the follow-up report and the initial radio report, both of those together, that really constitutes our size up. All right. So what we're looking at is what we need to transmit, what we need to say on the radio are the results of our 360, accountability location, confirmation of the incident strategy, resource confirmation, and any immediate safety concerns. So let's talk about a few of these individually. So the results of the 360, are we always going to be able to grab a 360? Not necessarily all the time we want to, but we're not always going to be able to do it for various reasons. Safety hazards, the size of the structure, crazy access issues, all kinds of things like that. Obviously, we want to get our eyes on as much of the structure as we can, but if we can't, we certainly need to relay that on the radio, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in some of the examples we give. But if we communicate that on the radio, say you're going in an apartment complex and you don't have access to the Charlie side or maybe even the Delta side, whatever. And if you say that you weren't able to complete a 360, maybe the second due engine takes, once they're inside the complex, maybe they take a different route, and that way they can grab the other sides for you. Same thing with the battalion chief. He's a little bit more mobile, a little quicker. He can get around the back side while driving his vehicle, maybe check things out as well in that regard. But the bottom line is, however it gets done, however you decide to get eyes on all four sides of that particular structure, if you can't do it initially, you need to relay that on the radio. All right. Now, accountability location, we need to identify the resource and the actual physical geographical location in relation to the building, if you will. So we would say something along the lines of accountability is located on engine 1 on the alpha side of the structure. Now, confirmation of the incident strategy and resource confirmation, two important things to mention here. Again, we've already talked about how important letting everybody know what strategy we're operating in is offensive versus defensive. Very important. And resource confirmation as well, talking about doing task math, making sure we have enough people on scene to handle the incident. But these two things, many times when we get out and do our walk around, many times these two things change. You know, we may call it a defensive fire and do our walk around and realize we actually got pretty good access, so it could be an offensive fire. Same thing with the resources. We may do our walk around and decide we need more or less resources. These two right here, the resource confirmation and strategy confirmation, they have a tendency to change between our initial radio report and our follow-up. And if they do change, need to relay that, obviously. And then, of course, any immediate safety concerns also needs to be relayed during your follow-up, should they exist. Okay, so once we've completed our initial radio report on our technical worksheet, we're gonna hit our follow-up report. So the initial radio report, as I stated a few times, the initial radio report is pretty much the view you get from the windshield of the truck or the engine, whatever apparatus you arrive on, if you will. So and then once we get out and do our walk around or attempt to do our walk around or gather more information, we're going to continue with our follow-up. Again, that's basically our follow-up is just confirming everything and addressing any kind of safety concerns or any other issues that we couldn't get in our initial radio report. Follow-up report's a good way to just clean everything up, to make sure that everybody has all the information they need as they continue their response. So some examples of some immediate safety concerns that you may need to consider. Verbalizing your follow-up is just a few here, just some examples here. Potential collapse area, hazardous roof structures, power lines down or arcing, gas meters or tanks exposed to fire, or any pressurized containers for that matter, and then swimming pools or ill-tempered hounds as well, might want to be verbalized so everybody knows what they're getting into once they get on scene. Okay, so moving along here, we're going to talk a little bit more about our follow-up reports and the importance of a follow-up report, why we use them, why we need to utilize them. Because again, our initial radio report is it's our view from the windshield. It's us establishing what we're going to do based on the view that we're getting from the windshield of our apparatus. So I know we've hit on a few initial radio reports already. I'm going to hit on this one right here for this particular scenario again, just in the interest of a smooth transition right to our follow-up. So again, what I'm going to say from my initial radio report: engine 1 to Cherokee, engine 1 go ahead. Engine 1's on the scene of a small one-story house. Have a working fire, smoke showing from the alpha side. Engine 1 will be laying a supply line, stretching a hand line to the alpha side for primary search and fire attack. Will be in the offensive strategy. We're going to hold this alarm, establishing Main Street command. So I'm holding this alarm based on this view of this house from my windshield. It looks like I have a smaller type house. I've got some not very aggressive smoke leaking out, but that's what I see right here from this perspective. All right, so I'm going to flip around. We're going to get our 360. We'll flip from the back side here. Obviously, a house looks a little bit different from the back side. We have a better fire location. We figure out right off the bat that we're on a walkout basement as well. Notice that right off the bat. So just from my perspective, looks like a lot more house to contend with from this back side than what I saw from a windshield on the front side. So that's the importance of the follow-up. So after I complete my initial radar report, I get my walk around, and then I'm going to relay that follow-up. All right, which goes like this. So I would say engine 1 to Cherokee for a follow-up. All right. We've talked a little bit about already. I think we've talked a little bit about preloading our messages, but preloading our messages is very important. All right, it prepares the receiver, the message receiver, prepares them mentally to absorb the information that you're about to send them. All right, so engine 1 to Cherokee with a follow-up. Engine 1, go ahead with your follow-up. All right, so I would say 360 has been completed. I'm confirming one story from the Charlie side on a walkout basement. Offensive strategy. Go ahead and upgrade this to, go ahead and balance this alarm to a full first. Again, with what I see back here, I'm thinking maybe now I may need more resources to clear the basement and to clear other areas of the house. So I'm going to balance to a full first just based on what I see on my 360. And then to finish that up, I'm going to establish my accountability location by saying accountability is on the alpha side at engine 1. So hopefully, based on that scenario, y'all can see the importance of the follow-up report. We're not always going to base our actions and base our IAP and our strategy or our risk management plan based on what we see from the windshield. Now, you can see there's a lot more house from the back side, or from the Charlie side, if you will, than what we saw on the Alpha side. Okay, so got a fresh tactical worksheet here. We're going to go through this initial radar report, follow up again for the same structure that we looked at on the previous 2 slides. Just want to show it all, put everything together for this particular scenario. So got the Alpha side view and a view from the Charlie Delta corner for your reference as well as we work through it. So again, start with our critical fireground factors. Have a small house. Small one-story house. We have working fire, smoke showing from the Alpha side. We're going to lay a supply line, stretch a hand line to the Alpha side for primary search and fire attack. We're going to be an offensive strategy. We're going to hold the alarm because based on this picture, the top picture looks like a smaller type house. I'm going to hold this alarm. I want to save those resources for other instances that may be out there. All right, so from my windshield, again, that's what my initial radar report is. From my windshield, I'm going to hold this alarm based on what I see. All right, so then I'm going to get out. I'm going to initiate my walk around. Well, once I name it Main Street Command, of course. And then I want to get out and initiate my walk around. So I'm going to complete my 360. All right, I'm going to confirm one story from the Charlie side. All right, but I do have a walkout basement. And I'm going to confirm my strategy is offensive, establish my accountability location on the Alpha side at engine 1. And now, based on what I see from the back, like we talked about in a couple earlier slides, I'm going to choose now to balance this alarm. Bigger house, likely more fire load. Looks like it could be a little bit more complex than what we originally thought from the Alpha side view. All right, so I'm going to balance the alarm. Okay. So we'll go ahead and go through this on the radio like we have in the past just to see what it would sound like. Engine 1, Cherokee.
Cherokee engine 1.
Engine 1's on the scene of a small one-story house. Working fire, smoke showing from the Alpha side. Engine 1 established a supply line stretching a hand line to the Alpha side for primary search and fire attack. Be an offensive strategy. Hold the alarm. We're establishing Main Street Command.
Cherokee's clear on your small one-story house with working fire with smoke showing Alpha side first floor. You'll be laying a line, stretching a line through the Alpha side of the first floor for fire attack and primary search. You're in the offensive strategy. I'm holding the assignment, your Main Street Command.
Main Street Command, Cherokee, for a follow-up.
Cherokee to Main Street Command, go ahead with your follow-up.
360 completed, confirming 1 story from the Charlie side. Have a walkout basement, confirming offensive strategy. Accountability established on the Alpha side of Engine 1. Going to balance this assignment.
Cherokee is clear of 360 completed, 1 story from Charlie. You have a walkout basement out in Charlie. You remain in the offensive strategy. Accountability location be Alpha side with Engine 1, and I'm balancing this side.
Okay, so that's what the initial radio report and a follow-up sounds like. Again, it just said it a couple times already. It's just a way for us to confirm what we saw from the windshield on the Alpha side, or it gives us an opportunity to change our tactics should the need arise. Okay. All right, so we've hit our couple different scenarios on our initial radio report, had a couple different times to work on our follow-ups. So now we're going to move into assigning units. All right, so I told you earlier a couple of times, what we're looking for here is a size up +3. So our initial radio report and our follow-up, that constitutes the totality of our size up. And then the +3 part is, giving out our assignments to actually begin mitigating the scene. So, your first, the +3, the size up +3, your first part of that +3, if you will, is actually your assignment, what you've given your crew. So what we've done in the previous scenario, we laid a supply line, stretched a hand line to the Alpha side for primary search and fire attack. That's the assignment of Engine 1, you of course being Engine 1. So that's one assignment down. Your next assignment will likely be to tell Engine 2 to spot out of the way, grab a second handle off Engine 1, enter the structure off the Alpha side, again for primary search or fire attack. Or maybe for confined control or exposure protection of some sort. The exposure protection might make sense if you're in a strip mall. All right, so those are all options there. Now the third unit, maybe your truck company gets on scene, and you might tell them to again spot them out of the way or spot to their best advantage, whatever makes the most sense, and then pull a third line or grab their own water supply and pull a line off their truck, and they can advance to the second floor for primary search and fire attack. So these are all things that we need to be thinking about as a company officer. When you're a company officer and you're first on scene, it's not only about what your crew is doing, it's about what the subsequently arriving crews need to do as well. You need to get a mental game plan in your mind, and you need to be able to communicate that game plan to the units arriving behind you. Now, when it comes to task assignment, being that you're managing so much from the interior of that structure, listen, get comfortable with your TLOs, all right, with your task location objectives. Engine 2, spot your apparatus out of the way, grab a second hand line off Engine 1, that's the task. Enter the structure off the Alpha side or the Bravo, Charlie, Delta, whichever, that's the location, and their objective is primary search and fire control, or maybe to pull ceiling, or maybe to check for extension. But giving them in that function, that brief, quick task location and objective, your TLOs, is critical in this system. All right, if you start telling folks to, follow the hand line in and join us, and we'll see what we can do. Come inside and help us out. Come in here and give us a hand. That leads to that can typically lead to freelancing, and that's things that I've given those assignments in the past, that exact same assignment. I'm sure many of y'all have as well. But we're trying to get away from that. We're trying to become more clear and more directed and more focused. Again, all this leads to clearing up the radio and keeping that radio free for the Mayday in the unfortunate event that something were to go wrong. So here's where we're at. All right, so and again, initial radio report, a follow-up, or size up, and we've just given our 3 assignments out. And from that point in time, that's about all we expect you to manage. So what happens from there? What happens if we got to put more units to work? Well, in this plan, in our system, we're looking to have a battalion chief on scene by this point in time. So if other people need to be deployed, the battalion chief will be there, and assume command via the proper command transfer process, which we'll talk about in a few slides. But that's what's going to happen is once we do our size up +3, we're going to expect the transfer of command to happen. If the incident remains active and continues to be active, we're going to rely on the battalion chief to take command and start giving out additional assignments from this point in time. So for engine company officers, folks riding on the seat, we're looking for the size up +3. Okay, guys, we're going to move on down to the next part of our technical worksheet, working on our unit assignments, which is the +3 part of the size up +3. We've hit our initial radio report. Our follow-up report's hit them pretty hard the last few slides. So we got our size up down. Now we need to hit our +3. So we're going to work through we'll do a little radio traffic demonstration here, like we've been doing, to kind of give you an idea of what it should sound like as we assign our units. All right. Engine 1, Cherokee.
Cherokee, Engine 1.
Engine 1 is on the scene of a small 2-story house. Working fire, smoke showing from the Alpha Charlie sides. Engine 1's grabbing their own supply line, stretching the hand line through the Alpha side to the basement for primary search and fire attack. Will be the offensive strategy. Balance the alarm, establishing Main Street Command.
Cherokee is clear. You have a small 2-story house with working fire, smoke showing Alpha and Charlie side. You'll be laying a line, stretching line through Alpha side of the basement for primary search and fire attack. You're in an offensive strategy. I'll balance your assignment, your Main Street Command.
Main Street Command, Cherokee, for a follow-up.
Cherokee, Main Street Command, go ahead with your follow-up.
360 is completed, confirming 2 stories from the Charlie side, sitting on the lookout basement, remaining in the offensive strategy. Accountability is Alpha side, Engine 1 will hold the assignment.
Cherokee's clear, 360 complete, 2 stories from Charlie side on the lookout basement. You remain in offensive strategy. Accountability location will be Alpha side of Engine 1, and you're holding the assignment.
Okay, so I've hit my size up, my follow-up, my initial radio report, my follow-up, and I've got myself assigned. All right, now I'm going to wait on Engine 2 and Truck 1 to arrive on scene and give those assignments as well.
Engine 2, Cherokee. Cherokee to Engine 2. Engine 2, level 1. Cherokee's clear, Engine 2's level 1.
Main Street Command, Engine 2.
Engine 2, go ahead.
Engine 2, spot your apparatus out of the way. Take a second hand line off Engine 1. Advance to the Alpha side, first floor for primary search and fire attack.
Engine 2's corner spot apparatus out of the way. Stretch the second line from Engine 1. Alpha side, first floor, primary search and fire attack.
Okay, so I got 2 assignments. I got size up and I got 2. Need 1 more. It should be Truck 1 arriving here on scene. We'll get them assigned, and when as a company initial arriving company officer, then we've pretty much done our duty. We've done all that can be expected.
Truck 1, Cherokee. Cherokee, Truck 1. Truck 1's on scene. Cherokee's clear, Truck 1's on scene.
Main Street Command, Truck 1.
Truck 1, go ahead.
Truck 1, spot your apparatus out of the way. Advance to the second floor on the Alpha side and pull ceiling. Check for a fire extension to the attic.
Truck 1's clear, spotting out of the way. Go to the second floor to pull ceiling. Outside.
All right, so here we are. We got our size up +3. Very important part of the Blue Card command system. It's a very good way of keeping up with your assignments. We figure that's about the most that can be done by a company officer. So you know, after this point in time, we're going to rely on the battalion chiefs to respond quickly to this incident, to make additional assignments, and to take this burden off of the engine company officer. All right, so working through these incidents with our tactical worksheet, we've hit our initial radio report a few times, our follow-up, just got through assigning some units to their tactical forward positions, and now the battalion chief should be getting close to being on scene. Now, if you remember from earlier in the program, we discussed how in our policies it's going to be set out that it's going to be laid out in our policies that only 3 apparatus on the initial 3-in-1 assignment are going to respond directly to the scene. That's the 1st In Engine Company, the 1st In Truck Company, and the 1st In Battalion Chief. All right, so we want the battalion chief. The battalion chief is going to be coming directly to the scene. All right, and the reason is like I said earlier, when you're talking about that size up +3 for the initial arriving engine company officer, that's a huge burden. That's a huge burden to manage that personnel and to manage those positions while you're inside an IDLH environment. So it's going to be priority 1 for the battalion chiefs to get there as quick as possible to take that burden off our engine company officers. All right, so, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but throughout this program, as we progress through this program and get more and more familiar, you'll hear the engine company officer be referred to as IC number 1 or Incident Commander number 1, and the battalion chief will be IC number 2. Just so when we're talking about command positioning and things of that nature, that's a way for us to distinguish back and forth. So the program will refer to it as IC1 and IC2. All right. So and again, once the battalion chief arrives on scene, if the hazard zone still exists, or the fire environment is still progressing to a nature to where we still have to actively engage to mitigate the issues or the incident, then we need to transfer that command to that IC number 2, the first arriving battalion chief or whoever's riding up for him. All right, so what we're looking to do is we're going to size up and verify that all operating positions match the current incident conditions. All right, that's once the IC number 2 takes a tactical position inside his vehicle, he's going to evaluate the structure and check things out, and he's going to verify that what he's seeing matches up with what he has heard you guys say on the radio to this point. He's going to transmit that he's on the scene. He's going to key up and let dispatch know that he's on the scene using the order model. Battalion 1 to Cherokee, Battalion 1 go ahead, Battalion 1's on the scene. All right. And then also using the order model again, we're going to contact IC1, who is the initial engine company officer arriving on the scene, and verify the positions and functions of all hazard zone resources. You'll notice on the next slide on our tactical worksheet in the command transfer area, we have a unit rundown section. That's an area where the battalion chief is going to write down the units that are on scene, and he's going to verify the positioning of those units based off the assignments you gave on the radio channel. All right, and then once confirmed with IC, you're going to obtain a CAN report. All right, he's going to give you a CAN, conditions, actions, and needs. IC1s, an engine company officers, be sure to give good cans. Remember, if you want to stay inside and get the job done, as opposed to having a battalion chief pull you outside to the front yard, give good cans. Because what he's doing when he pulls up, just like I said earlier, he's going to size up the scene. He's going to make sure that what he sees matches up with what you tell him. All right. Now, if you tell him, we're making good headway in this and that, and he's seeing crazy amounts of fire coming out the roof and thick, heavy black smoke coming out of all 4 corners, and you tell him, and you don't tell him anything about your needs, you don't tell him anything about what kind of effect your water's having. Listen, in some cases, fire coming out of the roof is okay as long as you're putting good water on it. But if you don't tell him you're putting good water on it, in other words, you don't give him your actions, the actions part of your CAN, if you don't tell him that, he has nothing to go by. He has nothing to size up. He has nothing to compare his exterior conditions to. So I'll say it again, folks. If you want to stay inside and put your fire out, make sure you give good cans. Okay, very, very important. And you'll see some of that. You'll see how that works out when you get to doing your practical scenarios up at the lab. All right. So once you get your can report, you're going to inform the IC1, the engine company officer, engine one, or whoever's there, that you'll be assuming command from the exterior, and then of course you'll call dispatch, announce your current strategy, if you're remaining in the offensive strategy, your resource determination, if you need any more resources, if you don't need any, and then you're going to confirm the command transfer. All right. So on the next couple of slides, we'll practice that. We'll check out the tactical worksheet as we've done for the other sections, and then we'll have a couple of practice runs through there to let you see what it sounds like. Okay, so here we are at the end of our tactical worksheet. We've got all hands working on the fire ground, done our size up +3, initial radio report, follow up. We've got everybody assigned and working hard. The battalion chief arrives on scene, and once he gets into tactical position to evaluate the fire ground, he's going to call the incident commander, and he's going to I got the tactical worksheet here, but he's going to call the incident commander. He's going to verify these unit assignments. All right, very important. We got to be able to keep track. We got to know where our folks are at. So we need to make sure we keep good mental pictures in our head of where everybody's at, so we can transfer that to the battalion chief once they arrive on scene. Now, once the battalion chief confirms this positioning, he's going to ask the incident commander to confirm everything with the can, and they'll provide the can. High heat, low heat, good visibility, applying water with good effect, no needs, or high heat, low visibility, applying water with little effect. Need a second crew in here for backup and reinforcements. All right, that's a great can right there. There's all those kinds of things. We typically know how to relay what we have, what we're doing, and what we need. We just need to be able to package that communication in a way to where we can evaluate that quickly and efficiently every time. All right, so we've evaluated this. We've got our can. We've got a can back. All right, so we're going to assume command. We're going to reconfirm our strategy to dispatch. So yeah, back down here on the bottom, this bottom row, I should have said, I apologize. This bottom row is what we're going to talk to dispatch about. So we're going to, Battalion 1 to Cherokee, Battalion 1, go ahead. Battalion 1 will be assuming Main Street command will be remaining in the offensive strategy, and we'll hold the alarm. That's as far as command, as far as battalion chief taking command and letting dispatch know, that's pretty much how it goes right there. So the command transfer is very important. It's not very complicated, but we need to get very efficient at it, so we can do it quickly and effectively. All right, so we're gonna go through a couple of these scenarios here shortly. In the next couple of slides, you'll get the feel of how it works out. So again, guys, I want to stress battalion chiefs, for the most part, have the easy job here. When it comes to this tactical worksheet and this communications package, huge burden on the first and engine company officers. All right, so we've got to get this transfer of command down in an efficient manner, so we can do this command transfer quickly and start assigning, and the battalion chief can start assigning other units to keep moving the incident forward in a positive manner. All right, so still, working on talking about command transfer. Command transfer is a pretty simple process. However, it's incredibly important process. We've got to establish who our incident commanders are. If you look at line of duty deaths regularly, you'll routinely find one of the reasons for line of duty deaths as being a lack of a true incident commander, or a lack of command presence on the scene. So it's, again, extremely important we have an efficient command transfer process that allows us to continue looking at all our critical factors. So we're going to hit another little radio demonstration right here, right quick, just to kind of see what it looks like. You hear the unit run down, the transfer of command to CAN, and then battalion chief actually assuming command. Battalion 1 Cherokee.
Cherokee to Battalion 1.
Battalion 1's on scene.
Cherokee's clear, Battalion 1's on scene.
Battalion 1 to Main Street Command.
Command, go ahead.
Command, I'm showing Engine 1 on a hand line through the Alpha side in the basement for primary search and fire attack. Engine 2 on a hand line through the Alpha side on the first floor for primary search and fire attack. And I show Truck 1 pulling ceiling, Alpha side, second floor, checking the attic for extension. Confirm with a CAN.
Battalion 1 is correct. Also, Engine 1 has a supply line. He'll get knocked down on fire, low heat, good visibility, no needs.
Battalion 1's clear. Engine 1 also has their own supply line. Break. Battalion 1 Cherokee.
Cherokee to Battalion 1.
Battalion 1's assuming Main Street Command, remaining in the offensive strategy. Hold the alarm.
Cherokee's clear, Battalion 1's assuming Main Street Command, remaining in offensive strategy, hold the alarm.
Okay, so that's a pretty simple and efficient command transfer. What I've done is I've given a rundown of what's going on inside the hot zone based off what I see in my CAD notes, maybe even based off what I was able to jot down on my tactical worksheet while I was en route, if that's possible. So basically we do size up +3 because, you know, +3 assignments, that's pretty much what we can do from memory. As battalion chiefs, the battalion chiefs, they are going to be out here trying to get to these incidences, and again, like I said before, in a quick fashion to take this burden off the initial incident commander. So that's what we're looking at now. When the battalion chiefs also, when they arrive on scene, they're going to be taking your CANs and what you're telling them. When they give that rundown and you confirm with your CAN, that CAN is very important to them. I think I've mentioned this a few times. They're going to be taking what you said and they're going to be evaluating that versus what they see. So if you say that you have, for example, low heat, good visibility, and applying water with good effect, but yet they have a 80-foot thermal column coming out the bay window on the Alpha side, that might be, they may choose to change that instant action plan. You might even be looking at a strategy shift. So keep in mind, that's what the battalion chief's job is going to do. He's evaluating what you say and comparing that to what he sees from the exterior. So very important process. Okay, so working through the tactical worksheet here, we've completed each element individually. I want to put it all together in one kind of demonstration right here, just to kind of demonstrate how it looks, how it sounds start to finish. All right, so we're going to start out with the initial radio report again, like always, hitting our critical fireground factors and whatnot. So, see what it sounds like. Engine 1 to Cherokee.
Cherokee, Engine 1.
Engine 1's on the scene of a small 2-story house, have a working fire with smoke showing from the Alpha Charlie side. Engine 1 will establish its own supply line, stretching a hand line through the Alpha side for primary search and fire attack. Will be in the offensive strategy. Hold the alarm. Main Street Command.
Cherokee's clear, Engine 1's on scene of a small 2-story house, have a working fire with smoke showing from Alpha and Charlie sides. The line stretching the line through Alpha side, first floor for primary search and fire attack. You're in an offensive strategy of holding your assignment, your Main Street Command.
Main Street Command to Cherokee for a follow-up.
Cherokee to Main Street Command, go over the follow-up.
3-6 is complete, confirming a 2-story house and a walkout basement. Fires located in the basement in the Charlie Delta corner. We'll be pulling a skid load to the Charlie Delta corner for a quick hit, and then advance to the Charlie side basement for primary search and fire attack. Accountability is Alpha side, engine 1, balance the alarm.
Cherokee's clear, 360 complete, 2-story house on a walkout basement. Fire's located in basement, Charlie Delta corner. Pull skid load, Charlie Delta corner for a quick hit, advance to Charlie side, basement for primary search fire attack. Accountability is Alpha side, engine 1, on balance your assignment.
Truck 1 to Cherokee.
Cherokee, truck 1.
Truck 1 is on scene.
Cherokee's clear, truck 1's on scene.
Main Street Command to Truck 1.
Truck 1, go ahead.
Truck 1, spot your apparatus out of the way, pull a second hand line off engine 1, advance to the first floor from the Alpha side for primary search and fire attack.
Command, truck 1 is clear. Spot apparatus out of the way and grab a second line off of engine 1. Advance to the first floor of the Alpha side for primary search and fire attack. Engine 2 to Cherokee.
Cherokee, engine 2.
Engine 2 is level 1.
Cherokee's clear, engine 2's level 1.
Main Street Command, engine 2.
Main Street Command, go ahead.
Engine 2, spot your apparatus out of the way, pull a second hand line from engine 1 and advance to the second floor from the Alpha side. Pull ceiling, check for attic extension and primary search.
Engine 2 is clear. Spot apparatus out of the way. Pull an additional line from engine 1 and advance to the second floor through the Alpha side. Check for attic extension and primary search. Battalion 1, Cherokee.
Cherokee, battalion 1.
Battalion 1's on scene.
Cherokee's clear, battalion 1's on scene.
Battalion 1 to Main Street Command.
Go ahead, Battalion 1.
Command, I show that engine 1 has a positive water supply and is operating interior hand line, Charlie side and basement for primary search and fire attack. Truck 1 operating an interior hand line, Alpha side, first floor for primary search and fire attack. Engine 2 is on the second floor, Alpha side, pulling ceiling, checking for attic extension and primary search. Confirm if this is correct, I'll give a cancel.
That is correct. We have a good knockdown on the fire, low heat, good visibility, applying water with good effect, no needs.
Command, I am clear. Good knockdown on the fire, low heat. Good visibility, applying water with good effect, no needs. I'll be assuming command from the exterior. Ready? Battalion 1 to Cherokee.
Cherokee to battalion 1.
Battalion 1 will be assuming Main Street Command. Hurry up and knock down on the fire. Manning and offensive strategy. Hold the off.
Cherokee's clear, battalion 1, assuming Main Street command, got a knock on the fire, man, offensive strategy, I'm holding you up.
Okay, so that's the tactical worksheet there all the way through the transfer of command. I feel like we've done a pretty good job beating it into you, trying to develop some muscle memory on how to do a good size up and manage your first 3 assignments. Again, battalion chiefs are getting there quicker now. All right, they're there to take that burden off of you. Said it several times. But this is basically how we're going to use our tactical worksheet in regards to our communications program. Keep in mind, guys, we need to start getting in the frame of mind. Especially if you're the first in engine company officer, you've got to think past your own responsibilities in this environment. It's time to start thinking about not only getting on scene and pulling your hand line and evaluating the situation, but what you're going to tell the next 10 companies to do. Take the time to look at your MDTs and know who's supposed to get there next. If you know that truck one's getting there second due, go ahead and be prepared to give truck one that assignment. Get them prepared to either back you up on interior in some form or fashion, or give them the roof report. Same thing with your engine companies. Whoever's coming there, be prepared to give them their assignment as soon as they get there, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit about radio discipline over the next couple of slides here, how we're going to use our radios. Again, look, we're trying to maintain an open line of communication between the incident commander and the crews working, but we're also trying to prevent unnecessary traffic on the radio. We want to keep the radio open as much as possible so we can manage that mayday as they come in. We're looking to improve this communication format so that we don't miss any maydays, basically. All right, so radio silence once assigned to the scene. Engine one as incident commander assigns engine 2 to a task at a location and gives them an objective, there's no reason for engine 2 to communicate back and forth with routine radio traffic. Now, there are instances where communication needs to take place, but we'll talk about that later on. But as a general rule, routine traffic, there's no need for that, just radio silence. All right, communications, if routine communications do need to take place, that just needs to be initiated by the incident commander. If the incident commander has a question and they need a CAN report, just to check your progress based on the amount of time they've been on scene or things like that, or maybe they're seeing some things change in regards to the fire scene, that can be driven by the incident commander. But as far as engine 1 or engine 2 communicating back and forth, it doesn't need to be driven by them unless it's packaged in a certain way, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. So obviously, just like we talked about earlier, need to use the order model. Using the order model improves the communication process. It prevents confusion. And if you don't believe me now, you'll see it when we get to do the practical up in the Command Training Center lab. Whenever we get to, hopefully next month, when we get to doing the practical part of this. But the main thing on this slide I want you to understand, again, is no good news reporting. There's no need to call the incident commander, tell them you're making good headway. There's no reason to call the incident commander and say room 1's complete, moving to the second room. If you are pulling ceiling and there's no fire in the attic, there's no reason to call command and say, hey, we just pulled ceiling in this room, we have no fire in the attic. All right, now if you were to have fire in the attic, that's kind of bad news, and there is a way to report that. And we'll look at that here shortly. A little bit more on radio discipline. Again, routine traffic, IC driven. He has a different vantage point from the exterior. There is going to be some routine traffic that he may need to communicate back and forth. Specifically, if there's additional or specialized equipment needed, those kind of things. But now in roof reports, status changes, priority traffic, and mayday traffic, all of these transmissions are generated by units in the hazard zone, and they're mandatory reports. So if truck 1 has been assigned to the roof, they will be providing roof reports. So an example of that traffic would be truck 1 to command for a roof report. And then they'd say truck 1 go ahead, and then truck 1 would proceed to give their roof reports. Now, again, talking about bad news, good news versus bad news. If that roof report includes bad news, then the traffic would be truck 1 to command for a priority roof report. All right, and that would include, abnormal roof load, abnormal loads on the roof, firewalls that aren't intact. You got fire in the attic, you got a lot of fire in the attic or something like that. You got some kind of crazy void spaces. All that's important stuff that needs to be relayed to command. Now, status changes. If you complete your primary search on the first floor and you want to go to the second floor, you report that as a status change. Again, we're going to preload that as well. Engine 1 to command with a status change. Engine 1, go ahead. Command, we have completed our primary search on the first floor. We're making access to the second floor. We have no needs. That's as simple to see how I gave a status report, and I also packaged it around a can. Now with priority traffic, Engine 1 to command with priority traffic. Engine 1, go ahead. Engine command, we found fire in the attic, heavy fire in the attic. We're applying water with good effect. We have no needs. Again, same thing there with the status change. The priority traffic is a little bit of bad news. I found fire in the attic, so I'm packaging that around a can. And he's going to take that can report. The incident commander is going to take that can report that you had just given him, and he's going to compare it to the conditions he sees on the outside. So he is using the information you give him from the inside, and he's using his visual cues from the exterior to decide how he needs to revise and continue his incident action plan. So very important in that regard. Now, in regards to Mayday traffic, we have a separate module that we're completing right now in regards to Mayday. So we'll catch you up on Mayday as soon as we complete that module. Kind of come full circle here back to the roof report. We've talked about the roof report a couple of times, but just to tidy up a couple of loose ends here, on the roof report would include the type of roof, peak to flat, mansard, all those good things, conditions of the roof. It's significantly important right here, stable or unstable, and then fire or smoke conditions, locations, whether or not you've cut an inspection hole, whether or not you've cut any other kind of hole or anything to check the fire conditions. Location of firewalls, whether or not the firewalls are intact. Think about a strip mall of some sort where your firewalls are. Your firewalls may have a significant bearing. Well, they will have a significant bearing on where you send the second due crew. What exposure you go to, or you send the second due crew on, bears significantly on where the firewalls are at and whether or not they're intact. Abnormal roof loads, again, conditions in the attic, and also basic blueprint of the building. You know, the Phoenix Southwest Superstore fire where Brett Tarver was killed in 2001. I'm sorry, the Phoenix Southwest Market, the grocery store, where Brett Tarver was killed in Phoenix in 2001. It was an L-shaped building, but the problem was, what confused them a lot, in front of that building was a hardware store, so they thought it was all one building. But the L part, if you can imagine that in your mind, the L part was actually part of the cooler, and it was a crazy layout. It looked like a basic four-sided building, but there was a couple of different occupancies in there that created a lot of confusion. I'm not saying had they had transmitted the blueprint of that building, if they wouldn't have had the tragedy that they ended up having that day. But I do think it played a part in how they went about trying to get firefighter Tarver out of that environment. So relaying a basic blueprint of the building can be significantly important, especially if it's abnormal, a little something out of the ordinary. Now, on the roof report, you can transmit the roof report once the information has been obtained. You don't necessarily have to wait to a certain time to give information back to command on the roof report, unless there's some other kind of priority traffic being relayed, or worse yet, a mayday. If there's priority traffic or a mayday, wait till that transmission is done. Wait till that transmission is complete before you transmit your roof report, especially if it's good news. If it's bad news that pertains to that particular situation, you might want to interject when the opportunity presents itself. But use the order model, the order model for good news reporting. Now, I told you earlier, good news reporting is not permitted. That the only challenge to that, the only caveat, if you will, is the roof report, because we have to have the roof report to continue operations. So if the roof is good, we're still going to jump in there and give a good news roof report if conditions provide for that. Routine reports should be transmitted to an IC working in strategic command position. In the strategic command position, that's what we're calling inside of a vehicle. Good news should be structured as a roof report. Example, truck 1 to command with a roof report. Always, it's important. I haven't talked about this enough, I don't think, but when it comes to these standard types of communication, your priority traffic, your status changes, and your roof reports, and your follow-up reports, always preload those. Let folks know what's coming next, because it tends to lend a little bit better focus. So in regards to bad news roof reports, bad news roof reports should be packaged as priority traffic. And must be transmitted as soon as the information is obtained. If it's priority traffic, you got crews working underneath you and there's fire in the attic and they haven't discovered that yet, that's something they need to know. So priority traffic, truck one to command with a priority roof report is a proper traffic. And, I think we'll have the opportunity to work through some of those scenarios here a little later. So finishing up with the roof report, last part here, we've done our roof report. We need to report our needs. Again, everything's packaged as a can. So when you give your roof report, you're actually giving the conditions and the actions that you've already taken, and now your needs. What are your needs? You need to get off the roof, obviously. You don't need to be hanging around up on the roof. Whether or not you need air or not, and then recycle versus rehab. Actually, recycle, rehab, or reassignment. A lot of times, if it's a quick job up on the roof, you can go right back in, and maybe the incident commander will assign you as an on-deck position. So just make sure to include your needs with your roof report. For example, truck one is exiting the roof on the Charlie side. We're low on air and we need to recycle. That's a great example of the needs associated with your roof report. More on specific radio communications. We hit the roof report. Now we'll talk about some status changes. Again, like we said earlier, changing work locations or exiting a structure to recycle or rehab or reassignment, that would constitute a status change. You must transmit the report before the change has been made. Obviously, it goes without saying that if you transmit your status report from the front yard, you're freelancing. You haven't. You're outside of the playbook of the incident commander. There's really no way to protect you if you're operating in that posture. So make sure to transmit the report before the change has been made. Again, I've said this several times. It's imperative we use the order model. Need to structure it as a status change. We need to preload that communication. Example: command to engine one with a status change. Engine one, go ahead with your status change. It lets everybody know what's coming. It lets everybody know. It puts everybody in the right frame of mind to expect some sort of relatively important communication. Okay, it's also going to require, any status change typically will require an accountability adjustment for the incident commander or the division boss. So again, the needs associated with status changes that complete the CAN report, everything's packaged again as a CAN. You need to mention your air supply status, the need to be reassigned, or all objectives completed on good air, the need to exit and recycle and rehab or for reassignment. Again, keeping your air in mind. The need to be replaced in the work area or passing supervision to another unit assigned to the work area. For example, some radio communication: engine one to command, go ahead. Engine one is below 50% air and needs to exit to recycle, leaving engine two in the work area to continue to overhaul. No other needs in alpha. Okay, alpha's referring typically in this right here. It sounds like in this context, alpha's referring to the main fired occupancy. And you told them how much air you got, what your need is, and who you're leaving in there to handle the task. So moving down the list here of different kinds of radio traffic, we're talking about priority traffic. Priority traffic is just about always bad news. It has the info in this kind of traffic has the ability to affect the entire operation. Has important info that will likely require an adjustment, such as redeploying a hand line or something along those lines to the current IEP. Perhaps can even precede a strategy shift. All right, because these are so important, they do have safety considerations in mind. The sender can break into the order model. I don't necessarily want to say you can completely ignore the order model, but you can kind of, in regards to safety and things along those lines, and accomplishing tactical goals, it is acceptable to break into the order model in this fashion. All right, so we hit on roof reports. We've hit on status changes. Working our way up the scale of importance in regards to communications, we're going to talk a little about priority traffic. Typically, priority traffic is reserved for something of kind of high significance in regards to the overall incident action plan, could have a direct effect on the carrying out of the overall incident action plan. This kind of communication is important in that reference. So if you're unable to complete a critical or assigned task that you've been assigned for whatever reason, that's going to be priority, some sort of priority traffic. You know, you can't make access, you don't have enough water, you have some sort of equipment failure or something like that. That's priority traffic. Urgent needs are to be reinforced or be backed up to complete an assigned task. For example, you find a heavy amount of fire in the basement, or just finding any fire in the basement when you wasn't expected, you're going to need backup on that most likely. All right. Typically, when victims are encountered, you know, we've got specific tasks: primary search and fire attack. Usually, that's what we're going to be doing. So, if we encounter a victim, and when we need to remove them from the environment, obviously, that prevents us from continuing our task. We're no longer searching, we're doing victim removal. We're no longer doing fire attack, we're doing victim removal. So that obviously has an effect on the overall incident action plan. So that's priority traffic as well. Roof reports containing info: unstable roof, imminent collapse, attic fire, that's priority traffic. So, and I think we talked a little bit earlier, if we have priority traffic in our roof report, we're no longer communicating just a roof report, we're communicating a priority roof report. Let's talk about attic fires a little bit. If you have an assignment, your engine company has an assignment, you go to the second floor and your assignment is to check for extension into the attic, or you go up there and you're just pulling ceiling as part of the locating the fire, and you find a fire in the attic. Even though attic fires are common occurrence for us around here, even, you know, if we expose that, we got a line with us, we put it out pretty quick, you know, to some that may not indicate priority traffic, but in this system it is priority traffic. You have to remember, you have an incident commander on the exterior who's comparing what he sees with what you tell him. All right, so if he sees an attic fire from the outside, or if he sees heavy smoke and thick smoke pushing from the eaves of the attic, and you don't let him know there's an attic fire going on, he doesn't have anything to compare that to. So he's got questions on the conditions of the fire inside, and that could have a significant bearing as to whether or not he lets you continue in the offensive strategy. So whenever you encounter an attic fire, it needs to be conveyed as priority traffic. It needs to be relayed right then, even if you can significantly handle it. The radio traffic may go something like this: Engine 1 to command, priority traffic. Engine 1, go ahead, priority traffic. Encountered an attic fire. We have we have low heat, good visibility. We're applying water with good effect. We have no needs. 10-4 commands clear, attic fire, high heat, or low heat, good visibility, applying water, good effect. You have no needs. And then you can go on continuing your operation, because he's going to compare what you just told him, or they're going to compare what you just told them to what they saw on the outside. All right, so it's very important to relay that attic fire, even though it is easily handled in most cases. So then, working in concealed space fires, not easily controlled by the locating unit. You know, fires in void spaces and things like that needs to be relayed in priority traffic. And sudden significant incident events, flashovers, backdrafts, you know, wind-driven fires and things of that nature that is hindering your operation, needs to be conveyed as priority traffic. So just we're going to continue a little bit more, just some more thoughts on priority traffic. You know, as I said in the previous slide, you know, whenever you encounter a victim, that's automatically priority traffic, regardless of how easy it is to get them outside or get them out of that situation. Even if you don't need any more manpower to help you out, it still takes you off your assignment. If you are assigned primary search and fire attack, you're no longer searching. You're extricating a victim. You're no longer doing fire attack. You're taking somebody to the exterior. So that is priority traffic. It needs to be relayed to the incident commander, so they can take the appropriate measures to ensure that the scene progresses according to what's laid out in the IEP. All right. So again, I don't think I've said this enough, but it certainly bears stating here. We need to structure our communications around CANs, conditions, actions, and needs. Again, it tells the incident commander what you're doing, what environment you're in, and what you need to either finish your task or to continue the task that you were doing. For example, you may say, if you're Engine 1 and your assignment is primary search and fire attack on the second floor, all right, you may say, Engine 1 to command priority traffic. Engine 1, go ahead with your priority traffic. Found a victim in the second floor Alpha Charlie bedroom. We're going to take her down the stairs and bring her out the front door. We have no needs. All right, and he's going to repeat that, and you continue on doing what you're doing. Or something else or another example may be Engine 1 to command with priority traffic. Engine 1, go ahead with your priority traffic. We found a victim in the Alpha Charlie bedroom on the second story, bringing him down the stairwell to the Alpha side. Need a second crew up here to continue primary search, starting on the Charlie Alpha bedroom on the second floor, continue on the left-hand search pattern. And of course, then they're going to repeat that to you. What that tells them is that you haven't finished your search. You know, if you finished your search, you're in the last room, you searched everything, and you find this victim right here in the last room, there may be no reason to continue your primary search on the second floor, so you may have no needs. But if you haven't finished your search, you need to get somebody up there quickly to help continue the search. You know, high likelihood if you find one, you could find another victim up there. So we need to be able to continue that process. So that's how we should structure our priority traffic, structure on the CANs. So the incident commander is continuing to evaluate things from the outside based on what you see from the inside, and then it relays the needs as well. Very important to continuing out the operations relative to the incident action plan. So we've hit roof report, status change, priority traffic, and now we're going to touch on emergency radio traffic in regards to standard forms of communication. So we got a little graphic here illustrating a couple of different things. Units and divisions, priority traffic only to the IC. All right, so if we have a division boss in place, like on a larger unit or a more complex, a larger occupancy or a more complex incident, if we have that division boss in place, the units will report directly to the division boss, and the division boss will report to the incident commander. All right, once they get that information, the incident commander will report to dispatch. Once the incident commander processes that information, they'll report to dispatch, and they will indicate the need for emergency tones or some sort, and we have that, we actually have that capability now, but we can call for emergency tones, and of course that'll be written in policy as well. But the dispatch center is obviously going to play a part. So basically what happens, some sort of significant event has happened or is about to happen, the resource will call his either division boss or incident commander, relay that to them, and then the incident commander will process that information and decide basically, do I need to leave folks inside, or do I need to get them out? That's what we're looking at. So we're looking at possibly a strategy shift based on what he's seeing, based on his visual indicators from the exterior, based on what his crews are telling him from the inside. So once he decides to make that defensive strategy shift to a defensive operation, he'll relay that information to dispatch. He'll request emergency tones to be broadcast on the main fire channel, and then basically we'll initiate the strategy shift, which looks like this. So they're going to clear dispatch. This commander will clear dispatch, which is basically Main Street Command to Cherokee. Cherokee, go ahead. That's clearing dispatch. Then he's going to ask for the emergency tones. The emergency tones will be transmitted, and then then we'll announce to all the hazard zone units that they're shifting. We are shifting to a defensive strategy. All units are either to exit or abandon the structure, and then all units will report PARs upon exit, and then dispatch will repeat the report verbatim. Now we've got exit and abandon highlighted there. It's obviously because there's two different definitions. If we're exiting, that means, pick up and, stop what you're doing, stop your advance, grab your tools and your hand line or whatever you have in there, and exit the structure in as orderly a fashion as possible. Now, obviously, if we're abandoning the structure, that means get out and get out now. Something bad's fixing to happen. Leave your tools inside, leave your hand lines in place. Take only what you need to make your escape, basically. If it's me, I want to grab my tool in case I need to work my way out, that kind of thing. But we need to be getting out of there quickly. Only take what you need. All right. Okay, folks, so here we are at the end of the online portion or the online lecture of the Blue Card Command Awareness class for Cherokee County. Hope you got a little something out of it. We have a lot of folks working hard, getting policies together, and working on training with the dispatchers and things along those lines. We really think we got this program headed in the right direction, and we could certainly appreciate y'all's input. Any comments or any sort of thoughts that you have on the program to make it better or anything like that, we'd certainly appreciate your input. Again, myself, Chief West, Chief Davis, Chief Capps, and Chief Lanier, we would all like to hear from you if you got any concerns, if you heard anything that might be a little conflicting or a little just completely different than what we've done in the past, or if you just want to sit down and talk about our vision for what we're doing, that'd be great. Just feel free to give any one of us a call or talk to us about it. With that being said, we hope to get you up in the lab real soon. That's really where this program really kind of leans into the wind, and you'll really see the benefits of it. It's when you can actually work through some scenarios while talking on the radio. It's a very efficient program and has a very common sense approach in regards to that. So again, appreciate you taking this on, and we'll see you soon. Bye.